Let us all prostrate ourselves for prayer. Almighty God, creator of the universe, we graciously thank you for your numerous blessings bestowed upon us. As we gather here today as future leaders, we look towards you for guidance and wisdom in our deliberations at first virtual 19th National Youth Parliament. Open our eyes to accept those things that are true and to demonstrate love always, so that we and all citizens of this nation can live in peace and harmony. Amen. Amin. Namaste.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members and our viewing audience, welcome to the second virtual National Youth Parliament 2021, hosted by the Office of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Honorable members, as you may be aware that former youth parliamentarian Jamal Zebra met his untimely death on Sunday, 27th June 2021. Jamal served as Marshal in the 16th National Youth Parliament. I now invite you to offer tributes. Member for Aruka Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable members, today we honor the life, contribution, and legacy of 18-year-old Jamal Zebra. Jamal was a former student of Signal Hill Secondary School and served as a marshal in the 16th National Youth Parliament, a responsibility which he upheld with great pride and dignity. Jamal was a vibrant and interactive youth who had a bright and promising future ahead of him, and it is unfortunate that his untimely death robbed him of such. To his family, I would like to express our heartfelt sympathy on behalf of the government. It is with a heavy heart that we mourn his loss. May his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it saddens me as I bring to this House a tribute to a son of the soil. In 2021, July, an alumni and former National Youth Parliamentarian, Jamal Zebra, became another victim of this plague of murder. It saddens me as today we honor the late Jamal Zebra's life, his contributions, his legacy, not only to this House, but to the youth space of Trinidad and Tobago. To the family of Mr. Zebra, on behalf of the members of the opposition and on behalf of this entire House, sincerest condolences. As Marshal of the Parliament in the 16th sitting, Mr. Zebra was vested with great responsibility in which he upheld with dignity and pride. Let us use this opportunity not only to celebrate Mr. Zebra, but to honor his memory by driving change within our country for the better. Eternal rest grant unto him, and let perpetual light shine. May he rest in peace.
Honorable members, we will now observe a moment of silence.
Papers.
Leader of the House, Member for Aruka Maloney.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper listed on the order paper in my name. The report of the 18th National Youth Parliament 2020-2021.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions, questions to ministers, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
Member for Aruka Maloney.
Madam Speaker, as required by Standing Order 33, I seek the leave of the House to consider private business instead of government business.
Honorable members, the question is that the House consider private business instead of government business. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, private members' business, motions.
Member for Siparia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak of the novel coronavirus a pandemic due to its alarming spread and severity. And whereas given the highly infectious nature of COVID-19 and its variants, there are ongoing risks of transmission and deaths due to said virus in Trinidad and Tobago. And whereas more than 18 months after being declared a pandemic, the virus continues to be a major threat to public health and the social and economic structures of society. And whereas the World Health Organization has declared vaccination as the foremost preventative measure in the global fight against the transmission of COVID-19 virus and its variants, be it resolved that this National Youth Parliament call on the government to implement a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces. Madam Speaker, following the WHO's declaration cited in the first recital of our motion, since the 12th of March, the Minister of Health reported our country's first confirmed imported case of COVID-19. With the onset of this newly discovered strain of coronavirus, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and people across the world were called upon to take action in a concerted effort to combat against the spread of this disease. Madam Speaker, we, the opposition, have witnessed the government's efforts to deliver commendable strategies in response to COVID-19. However, we need to confront some hard-to-swallow truths today. Madam Speaker, thus far, the government's hesitancy has resulted in our current state of affairs. Madam Speaker, to highlight support for the second recital of our motion, the month of November 2021 was our deadliest, with 419 deaths to COVID-19. And according to the Minister of Health, we are now in our third wave of increased transmission of COVID-19 across the country. Our healthcare system currently is constantly balancing our overburdened intensive care and high dependency units. And with the recent surge of Delta variant cases locally, as well as the rise of new and more resilient variants across the world, what assurity can the government give to our people that we are prepared to cope with the demands of a country that is slowly succumbing to this virus? Madam Speaker, how is it that although the government has enforced mandatory mask wearing and hand washing policy, we have used the state of emergency and educational marketing to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus, we have still seen the unprecedented loss of 2,115 lives? while the percentage of fully vaccinated citizens have plateaued to 46%. Madam Speaker, I believe these failures are a testament to the current administration's ineffective approach to containing this pandemic. Madam Speaker, the intention of any public policy, to be clear, is to provide a path of action in pursuit of a desired goal through the implementation of a framework of guidelines. Madam Speaker, utilizing health policy is a course of action that governments across the world have courageously chosen in response to the deceleration of vaccination rates in their countries, high mortality, and their interest to preserve public health. Madam Speaker, this proposed mandate by the opposition would compel vaccination nationwide of persons between the ages of 12 to 65, our largest demographic pool, which constitutes of 1,054,015 citizens, according to the Central Statistical Office of Trinidad and Tobago as at June 2021. Madam Speaker, it is no surprise to anyone in this room that the global economy has been negatively affected by COVID-19. On October 6, 2021, the Minister of Finance shared a bleak reality with the people of this country that we are no exception to this rule. That yet again we are operating at a loss with a fiscal deficit of $9.096 billion, while our unemployment rate has increased to 5.1% as at June 2021. And Madam Speaker, we can never intend to return to business without an effective plan. As we see, as alongside the mandatory vaccination policy, the opposition also advocates for multi-sectoral partnerships between the government and public and private sector entities to ensure that there's a strong support and cooperation on the way forward with all intention to protect our workforce and drive our economy and stimulate business activity. Madam Speaker, on Monday, the 25th of October, the Minister of Education, my apologies, advised that all 4 to 6 students, vaccinated and unvaccinated, must return to in-house classes. While my bench appreciates that this is due to increased dropout rates and underperformance of our students at CAPE and CSEC levels, our students' safety remains paramount. It would seem unbelievable, to be honest, that our minister's solace to worried parents who are having their children go to schools now with more exposure to COVID-19 than ever before is that she is sanctioning the positioning of health and safety officers to be stationed at schools, but has simultaneously failed to stipulate vaccination requirement for the teaching faculty. Madam Speaker, it would be remiss of me to overlook the fact that the infrastructure of some of our schools limits the ability for social distancing, or that the possibility exists that the increase in physical travel might unfortunately increase the probability of exposure to COVID-19 by our students. But I want to reiterate that the opposition supports ensuring that all students are able to access the educational resources they need. However, we must confront the reality that vaccination is one of the most accessible and viable solutions in our toolkit to mitigate the loss of life while giving our youth a chance at academic success. But Madam Speaker, I know that the term mandatory vaccination may seem a little bit drastic, but as supported by the WHO in a policy brief on the 13th of April, 2021, mandatory vaccination is not truly compulsory. Similar to countries like Australia, Costa Rica, Denmark, Hungary, Italy, and Antigua and Barbuda, where mandatory vaccination policy has been established, this approach has aided them in setting clear benchmarks for the achievement of public health goals through timelines, mobilization of resources, establishing clear requirements, as well as financial penalties in cases of non-compliance, all while accommodating for reasonable exceptions and subsidization of COVID testing. Madam Speaker, we all understand that every vaccine we have at our immediate disposal comes with risk. But with compelling evidence related to vaccine safety and effectiveness, the deployment of stronger measures that necessitates vaccination among able-bodied, non-immunocompromised, and the least. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
In accordance with Standing Order 41.5, the motion requires a seconder.
My apologies, I beg to move.
Honorable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Whereas on March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, a pandemic due to its alarming spread and severity. And whereas, given the highly infectious nature of COVID-19 and its variants, there are ongoing risks of transmission and deaths due to said virus in Trinidad and Tobago. And whereas more than 18 months after being declared a pandemic, the virus continues to be a major threat to public health and the social and economic structures of society. And whereas the Health Organization has declared vaccination as the foremost preventative measure in the global fight against the transmission of the COVID-19 virus and its variants, my apologies, be it resolved that this National Youth Parliament call on the government to implement a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces. Minister of Legal Affairs, member for San Fernando West. Minister, you have 9 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd first like to start by saying two things. First and foremost, this government is pro-vaccine. You can look no further than the countless vaccination drives that we've implemented throughout the country. We've even allocated vaccines to the University of the West Indies and several corporations so that our citizens could be vaccinated. So to suggest that we don't want to vaccinate our citizens is quite frankly ludicrous. Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition alluded to our mask-wearing policies, our social distance policies, and our policies regarding the washing and sanitization of hands. Madam Speaker, perhaps it's because this opposition has not spent much time as a government that they don't understand or fully comprehend how a government works. You can have as much justification or rationale as you can for a policy. However, as right as you may believe it to be, you simply cannot implement something that is unlawful. And that is what this motion is. It is unlawful, and it is a derogation of the citizens' constitutional rights, namely the right in Section 4 to life, to liberty. And let me remind you, Madam Speaker, the Constitution is supreme. This means that no legislation, no act can derogate the Constitution. If any act does derogate the Constitution, it must be struck down. I concede there is Section 13, which accounts for a derogation of rights in a lawful manner. But even in this regard, this motion is not lawful because Section 13 states that where it is reasonably justifiable, a derogation of rights is allowed. Now, Madam Speaker, what is reasonable to me, to you, to the Leader of the Opposition? That's not for us to decide. that is set by legal precedent. And the legal precedent is put forth by Chief Justice Ivor Archie in the Northern Construction and Attorney General case. It has a threefold criteria. First, the objective must be sufficiently important. It is. You can look no further by the countless updates that we put out daily, the countless press conferences that we have. We clearly concede that the threat of COVID-19 is a sufficiently important objective. Trying to prevent deaths is a sufficiently important objective. And this is where I've come to the second element of this criteria, where it must be rationally connected. And this is where the motion fails. Madam Speaker, perhaps the opposition has not looked at the daily COVID-19 updates sent out by the Ministry of Health. But I will educate them. Just yesterday, of the 25 deaths reported, 16 of the persons who had passed on from the COVID-19 disease were elderly persons. And this is not an anomaly. This is a pattern. It is consistent. Every time deaths are reported from the COVID-19 disease, you see the majority of these deaths being from elderly persons. And more than that, the persons who are dying from the COVID-19 diseases also have comorbidities. And I see nowhere in this motion where there's exemptions made for comorbidities. I can only wonder why the opposition has not included that in their motion. But I digress. The third element of this test is that the means adopted must be no more than necessary. And at this point, I would like to go back to something that the leader of the opposition alluded to earlier on. He said that the World Health Organization conceded that vaccinations were the first and foremost method of prevention. We agree. He also made allusions to our policies, suggesting if we've adopted these policies, why not adopt the vaccinational policies? In the April policy brief released by the World Health Organization, they said yes, vaccinations are necessary. But they caveated this by saying mandates cannot be passed by governments just so on a whim. They must be guided by ethical considerations such as necessity and proportionality. If we're looking at the Ministry of Health's Epidemiology Division's statistics, 82.4% of the persons who have died from COVID-19 are above the age of 50. Madam Speaker, do we have 50-year-olds in secondary school? No, we don't. The persons dying from COVID-19 are not in secondary schools. If they're in working places, they're close to retirement or out of the workplace entirely. So why have you not targeted these high-risk groups? Again, one can only wonder why. And Madam Speaker, this is the part that would have confuffled me the most when the leader of the opposition was making his contribution. He said that this policy would compel persons to take the vaccine. Madam Speaker, I don't know if the opposition doesn't know what they're asking for, but if you are suggesting a policy, the implication is that this policy be implemented through legislation. How do you seek to enforce this legislation? Is it that you are going to imprison people if they don't get vaccinated? What if they can't get vaccinated because of the comorbidities? Aside from that, even if you don't seek to imprison persons, are you going to suggest that they pay fines? You just alluded to the disrepute our economy is currently in, and your suggestion is to make people pay? Madam Speaker, that makes no sense. It doesn't. And Madam Speaker, it escapes me why the opposition has not looked at the lawful means through which this policy could be implemented. And that is through the workplaces and the secondary schools implementing policies of their own, because that does not derogate the rights, because it's not legislation. These institutions have the right to implement policies. What evidence does the opposition have to say that these policies won't be adopted? Moreover, what evidence does the opposition have to say that it's secondary school children and persons in the workplace that are unvaccinated? And the leader of the opposition also spoke about the state that our healthcare system is in. Madam Speaker, 90% of the persons in the healthcare system are unvaccinated or not fully vaccinated. Madam Speaker, this is a problem of vaccine hesitancy. These people are scared. They are fearful. And we're all scared. This is a very scary disease. Nobody wants to die, but it's a new vaccination. And I remind you, 55% of our population are currently unvaccinated or not fully vaccinated. The opposition is asking us to willfully derogate the rights of our citizens.
Member for San Fernando West, thank you, but your time has ended.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the motion and I rise in support of my leader. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General stated that the rights enshrined in the Constitution are supreme. However, I would like to remind her of the case of Collymore versus the Attorney General, in which it states all rights enshrined in sections 4 and 5 are not absolute. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General stated that we made no exceptions for persons with comorbidities. However, I wonder if she was paying attention to the motion the opposition leader presented, because clearly he stated that we are willing to make medical exemptions for persons. I outlined the policy now that we plan to propose to the government, because again, we are proposing a policy, but it's up to the government if this House today chooses to put forward this motion to come up with the policy. Would the opposition propose that all persons in secondary schools and the workplace be vaccinated? Madam Speaker, we understand that persons cannot take the vaccine for medical reasons. And to that, we suggest they consult a medical officer, and if they do qualify for a medical exemption certificate, that will be granted to them. We also understand, Madam Speaker, the persons are seeking exemption based on religious grounds. On that, we propose, Madam Speaker, the creation of a religious exemption certificate. In that, persons will consult with their religious leader and be granted the certificate. Persons holding either of these certificates will have to submit a negative COVID-19 test every 14 days. We also understand the state of the economy, the contraction of the economy, and we propose to the government again that they subsidize these tests, so that, because we understand that these tests are very costly for those who are exempted. Madam Speaker, with reference to yesterday's statistics, yesterday's press release by the Ministry of Health, 456 persons have contracted the COVID-19 virus within the last 24 hours. 25 deaths have been added to our total, making it 2,115 deaths, Madam Speaker. November was the deadliest month. Madam Speaker, continuing with this, I would also like to bring to the attention of the government that food prices has risen by 5.7% according to the Central Statistical Office. Our GDP has a negative contraction of 1.4%, Madam Speaker. Businesses are opening not because they want to, not because COVID-19 has disappeared overnight, because they have to risk their lives to maintain a livelihood. The Attorney General asks why we are targeting the wrong group, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are not targeting the wrong group because while, yes, the elderly population is a harsher demographic for the fatalities, Madam Speaker, it should also be noted that our working force is also dying. 5 middle-aged men have died yesterday alone. Does she not regard these lives? She states that 50-year-olds in secondary school, Madam Speaker, we have had 55 cases since the beginning since school children have been allowed to go out. Forgive me if I'm getting emotional, but whenever I think about those 4 children who have died, Madam Speaker, it breaks my heart. And to think that the Attorney General comes to us and say, what 50-year-old is in secondary school? Does she not understand? Does she not understand the severity of the situation we are in today? The opposition understands that a mandatory vaccination policy is not any light matter. We understand all issues this transcends. Madam Speaker, with reference to the policy brief, WHO ethical considerations and caveats published on April 13th, 2021, I understand and it's noted that the WHO does not support mandatory vaccinations. However, the WHO also does not support the requirement of inoculation for international travel, yet many countries require this as entry to their borders. Madam Speaker, in that particular document, it states that that the WHO pushes and recommends for countries to reason with persons who are able-bodied to take the vaccine. However, if these persons are not taking the vaccine and if efforts to reason with them are futile, it is in the best interest and in order to achieve public health goals that the mandatory vaccination policy is then ethically justifiable. And the public health goal here is herd immunity, Madam Speaker, because on multiple occasions, the Minister of Health has alluded that Trinidad and Tobago should be looking to herd immunity. Madam Speaker, and Trinidad and Tobago is not the first country to do this. My leader of opposition has noted in his motion. Madam Speaker, with reference to Austria, they have put their persons under lockdown if they are not vaccinated. Madam Speaker, Lativa has given their workplaces permission to ban their employees. What we the opposition are proposing today, Madam Speaker, it's not something so draconian. It's not undemocratic, non-democratic, Madam Speaker. We are not putting a be-all and end-all one-size-fit-all solution, Madam Speaker. We have taken in consideration the exemptions persons may be qualified for. And while we understand, Madam Speaker, that this may seem harsh and this may seem drastic, it is a measure that is needed because we have exhausted all possible avenues, Madam Speaker. In this fight against COVID-19, I commend the government, but they have to take this one step further. We are at a stalemate in our response to COVID-19. And Madam Speaker, with that, I would like to end my contribution in silence for the 2,115 persons who have died, inclusive of 4 children.
Thank you, Member for Couva South. Member for St. Joseph. Minister of Health, Member for St. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I would like to begin by commending the opposition for bringing this motion in an attempt to seemingly empathize with the citizens of this great nation who has lost loved ones via the COVID-19 pandemic. The motion is intended to bring a mandatory vaccination policy for school-aged children and persons in the workplace. However, as Minister of Health, I must correct the misconceptions held by the opposition. I want to draw your attention as well to the latest COVID-19 updates by the Ministry of Health. To date, we have had a total of over 70,000 cases, of which 57,000 have fully recovered. So what does that mean? This gives us a recovery rate of 82%, which without having a mandate is quite pleasable. These figures are, however, in line with the US, who stands at 79%, the United Kingdom at 83%, as well as Germany. We stand with the advice of our trusted professionals who continue to guide us step by step in this process and advised us that based on these figures, we are in line with and in many cases doing better than expected in this challenging pandemic.
Will the member give way?
I'm sorry, but my time is limited. As I continue, Madam Speaker, as of November 28, 2021, the total number of completed vaccinations are over 600,000, with an additional 44,000 single doses being administered daily. This gives us a rough estimate of over 50% of our eligible population heeding the call to voluntarily vaccinate. Madam Speaker, those members of the opposition bench are stating the need for us to force all already traumatized population to vaccinate, disabling rights and freedom when so many has lost a sense of safety, security, and assurance.
Member for St. Joseph, Standing Order 4410 has been raised. Can you continue your contribution without reading from your script, please?
Sorry, as I continue. Let's look at some policies. On September 10th, 2021, according to Reuters media agency, and I quote, the US President Joe Biden ordered all federal workers and contractors to be vaccinated. This came atop the vaccination mandate of all private sector workers being inoculated or tested weekly, end quote. Sounds good, right? Yeah. So why are there at 50 million cases and over 800,000 deaths? The mandates don't even seem to scratch the surface, much less put a dent in these numbers. Hold up. There's also Hungary with over 10,000 daily cases as well as 200 daily deaths. Italy with 5 million cases and over 134 deaths, and the numbers are still rising. However, even without annotated sources, these mandatory vaccination policies haven't seemed to reduce the number of cases and deaths in these various countries. The reach continues to be identical and some even worse than countries that don't even have mandates. So why put ourselves in that position? So while mandatory vaccination seems to be the new buzzwords for the opposition, let us leave that to rest. The WHO itself has stated, as the member of Couva North brought up, that it does not support mandatory vaccinations, but prefer information campaigns and for governments to make vaccines more widely available. So as the government of this great nation, we are taking care of our health workers, we are regularizing contracts to ensure job security, we are hiring additional staff to ensure regulation, which gives others ample time to rest and recuperate for the following day. We are also implementing a policy to ramp up vaccinations by increasing the number of medical professionals who can administer vaccines, which creates a vaccination hub in every community.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute. Now, we all know about the emergence of a new variant, Omicron, and according to an article, Omicron Threat, published by the Daily Express, updated on November 28, 2021, Omicron declared by the World Health Organization as a variant of concern was the first reported in South Africa on November 24th. The variant suspected to be more transmissible has also been identified in Belgium, Hong Kong, Israel, and the United Kingdom. According to the professor of molecular genetics and virology at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Christine Carrington, it's only a matter of time before it enters this country. Madam Speaker, within the time that the opposition has brought forth this motion, and today, a lot has happened. Now, more than ever, we need to implement a mandatory vaccination policy. according to an article about vaccine efficacy, effectiveness, and protection published by the World Health Organization on 14 July 2021. And I quote, "Vaccines are likely staying effective against variants because of the broad immune response they cause, which means that virus changes or mutations are unlikely to make vaccines completely ineffective." And it continues to say that as stronger variants emerge, it's important to take your vaccine when it's your turn, end quote. Therefore, in an effort to protect our nation or give them that sense of immunity, we believe that a mandatory vaccination policy in the secondary schools and the workplace will be able to do this. Now, I know as members of our bench would have highlighted already, but I would like to quote this as I see that as well as the Attorney General and the Minister of Health fail to recognize or acknowledge the situation that we are in. According to an article about the number of deaths in November published by Trinidad Guardian newspaper, Friday, November 26, 2021, November 2021 has become Trinidad and Tobago's deadliest month during the COVID-19 pandemic to date. On Thursday, Trinidad and Tobago took the grim title of recording the highest daily confirmed COVID-19 deaths per million people, which was 31. Now, I am so concerned that the Minister of Health would think that we are in a good position, as well as the Attorney General asking for reasons why we should mandate. Now, isn't this a clear indication that the measures and initiatives conducted by the government are not enough? We are seeing that as of yesterday, Sunday, 28th November, according to the media release by the Ministry of Health, 25 new cases. We're seeing for this month alone, we had 419 deaths. Now, I would like to ask the government, what if you disagree with our alternative solution? What do you have in plan? How do you plan to respond to those variants? How are you going to treat with this situation? As highlighted in the third recital, COVID-19 continues to be a major threat to public health. So how are we going to improve our situation? We are seeing that it's not enough in terms of the elderly. They can still get vaccinated. We have not excluded them from our motion, even though we have not identified them as a priority group. But I would like to remind the Attorney General, according to an article, Frequently Asked Questions, COVID-19 Vaccines by the Pan American Health Organization, and I quote, "Recommendations regarding priority groups will be taken into consideration epidemiologic scenarios, overall public health strategy, and vaccine supply. However, each country will need to adapt those recommendations to their context," end quote. Therefore, it is up to us to make that decision that will benefit all of our citizens. And now, again, I would like to remind that we commend the government for all the initiatives, but we still have a high level of vaccination hesitancy in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, I would like to remind that, yes, we acknowledge that while the elderly and those with comorbidities may be more severely affected by the virus, but as stated in the fourth recital, we intend not only to reduce the number of deaths, but also the transmission of this virus. According to the World Health Organization, 2nd September 2021, evidence suggests that adolescents are as likely to transmit the virus as adults. We recognize that as school reopen and children are allowed to go back.
Can a member give way?
Sure.
What scientific evidence do you have that supports the notion that vaccines prevent transmission?
As stated again in our third recital, that it is the foremost preventative measure, and that is according to the World Health Organization. As I continue, when we have children going back into schools, as well as workers going back to the workplace, we have cluster cases and breakthrough cases. The likelihood of that happening, it's alarming, it's scary. Now, we, the opposition, we acknowledge and we anticipate the spikes in these cases, and that is why we have proposed this motion. And we are trying to safeguard our nation, give them that sort of protection. With that, Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Couva North, Minister of Labour, Member for Labre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute in the debate, and thank you, opposition member, for your contribution. Madam Speaker, we have been in this pandemic for 1 year and 8 months now, Madam Speaker. The first case of COVID-19 was reported in Trinidad and Tobago on March 12, 2020, Madam Speaker. There have been many measures put in place by this government of Trinidad and Tobago in order to fight against COVID-19. We have implemented the mandatory use of face masks in public spaces, which was recommended by who? The World Health Organization, as well as the CDC, Madam Speaker, the Center of Disease Control, which are experienced bodies in dealing with pandemic and viruses, Madam Speaker. We have also temporarily closed public spaces and recreational facilities, Madam Speaker, as well as the SOE, which has been disbanded as it served its purpose in reducing infection rates in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. However, this motion brought today by the opposition, Madam Speaker, is a reparatory breach against employee contract. The obligations of the employer should not be to hire someone based on their vaccination status. Someone should not gain education based on a vaccination card, Madam Speaker. This can only lead to more unemployment and persons being uneducated in the population. Madam Speaker, the unemployment rate as of today stands at 6.74%. And although we have urged the population to get vaccinated, this motion brought today by the opposition seems very forced and oppressive on the population targeted, Madam Speaker. And this can only lead to more oppression and more resistance from this population, Madam Speaker. In a time where we need to stand together, this motion will separate us. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have managed to vaccinate nearly half of our population in a span of just 9 months, Madam Speaker. As of this morning, that value rose to 45.9%. And it shows that there's willingness in the population to get vaccinated. We do not need to vaccinate in order to operate. We are already operating, Madam Speaker.
Would the member give way?
No, I will not give way, Madam Speaker, because this opposition is trying to prevent me from saying the truth, Madam Speaker. There are many alternatives that have been implemented by this government of Trinidad and Tobago, which include the measures of sanitization, social distancing, Madam Speaker, as well as mandatory mask wearing, which all assist in reducing transmission. The vaccine, Madam Speaker, does not reduce transmission, Madam Speaker. It does not. And instead, this is why we should focus on denying the virus a pathway from spreading from person to person, Madam Speaker. And the opposition will come today to tell me, the Minister of Labour, that the healthcare workers are strained. I know they are strained, Madam Speaker, and this is why we need some sort of public responsibility in Trinidad and Tobago to reduce the transmission. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Maruga Tableland.
Madam Speaker, thank you for allowing me to contribute. Madam Speaker, whilst I do commend members of the government for their efforts, we of the opposition are here to assist. Madam Speaker, the government has come and thus far presented information which may be placed into 3 main categories, including moralistic concepts, democracy, and of course, violation of rights. Madam Speaker, in response to this, I would like to inform members of the government that the connection between law and this pandemic, Madam Speaker, may be labeled each case is unique. I am to wonder, Madam Speaker, whether or not the government of a constitutional parliament is contesting its constitution. With reference to my colleague, member for Cougar South's contribution, the constitution does indeed feature vaccine mandates. Therefore, Madam Speaker, this policy speaks to persons, Madam Speaker, who desire to participate in certain social activities. Madam Speaker, whilst we do acknowledge the importance of these social activities, we must also acknowledge, Madam Speaker, equally acknowledge that these risks associated with this physical interaction is also still ever present, Madam Speaker, and ongoing. Madam Speaker, with reference to Dr. Avery Hines' confirmation that in an article in Loop Titi dated the 27th of November 2021, we do see, Madam Speaker, that the month of November has a 45% rate of COVID-19 positivity, the highest, Madam Speaker, rate since that of July 2021. Madam Speaker, to compare this, Madam Speaker, to the Senior Director of Infection Prevention at Johns Hopkins University's opinion on the surge seen in the U.S. in December 2020, Madam Speaker, we find that she did, in fact, Dr. Lisa Marakagis did, in fact, identify the ease or relaxation of COVID-19 related policies as a major contributing factor to the surge seen in the US in December 2020. So I am to ask the government, are we to wait, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, the Attorney General has suggested that we are targeting the wrong population. Madam Speaker, it is alarming that she is awaiting persuasion, which entails, Madam Speaker, quite frankly, more youths within our country, Madam Speaker, dying, Madam Speaker, more headlines, Madam Speaker, such as the July 31st, 2021 Loop Titi article, which was headlined, 56 students missed, Madam Speaker, CSEC exams, Madam Speaker, due to COVID-19 cases. Is that what we are waiting? Madam Speaker.
Member give way.
Sure.
Are you basing your motion on headlines or scientific data?
Attorney General, be not hasty. We are getting to that. Madam Speaker, we do see that some tasks do require physical closeness. With reference to the physical school demand, as noted by the Ministry of Education's press release on the 20th of October 2021, whereby they did actually state that there was a 8.57% decrease in the amount of CSEC students who were able to achieve passing grades in 5 or more subjects, inclusive of the compulsories. Madam Speaker, they also noted that there was a 1.27 decrease in the CAPE performance of 2020, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, therefore, this indicates a demand for physical schooling, something which requires, indeed, physical closeness. However, Madam Speaker, policy is proactivity. And in doing this, Madam Speaker, we are acknowledging the efficacy of relevant resources and tools and other tools such as the social distancing. However, Madam Speaker, adapting this to a circumstance whereby, as I mentioned, physical interaction and physical closeness is indeed inevitable, we find that we must complement these tools, Madam Speaker, with something equally effective, or more, might I say, Madam Speaker, effective, such as this policy. Madam Speaker, if you were to refer to data available on the Ministry of Health's website via your daily COVID-19 updates, you would find that from November the 18th to November 24th, the amount of patients in the parallel healthcare system who were unvaccinated or partially vaccinated equal to a total of 97.1%, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you would find that from the 24th, Madam Speaker, to the 27th of November, Madam Speaker, 90.9%, Madam Speaker, of the persons in the parallel healthcare system were indeed partially or unvaccinated. Madam Speaker, what does this suggest? That persons who are partially or unvaccinated, Madam Speaker, they are more likely, Madam Speaker, to suffer the risk of hospitalization. Madam Speaker, this policy means that an unvaccinated population or persons who choose not to become vaccinated upon the introduction of this policy would in fact be conducting everyday human affairs whilst observing social distancing measures and other relevant measures. Madam Speaker, therefore, the government is failing to understand that we are still charting the new way forward, Madam Speaker, via trial and error. Thus, we do support this, Madam Speaker, and we by no means discourage this valid scientific approach. As Madam Speaker, in charting the new way forward, innovation is key. Madam Speaker, we have a government that has been misrepresenting vaccination, whereby we see citizens thinking, Madam Speaker, that vaccination cards indeed go hand in hand with cinema tickets. Madam Speaker, it is atrocious. How unfairly, Madam Speaker, vaccination has been demonized.
Thank you, Member for Moruga Tableland. But your time has expired. Member for St. Anne's East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to today's debate. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to focus on our future. Allow me to focus on the children of our nation. Allow me to focus on our education sector. The ministry has been trying their very best to stay on top with all that has been happening, especially since our school doors have opened to vaccinated and unvaccinated students.
Madam Speaker, members reading.
Continue, Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, we continue to observe all protocol within our secondary schools, inclusive of washing up hands, proper sanitization, social distancing in the classroom and out of the classroom, as well as temperature checks upon arrival, etc. Madam Speaker, we have also implemented that assemblies be held via the PA systems within the schools to ensure that students are not crowded within a confined area. To help with this new normal, we have even appointed a house doctor as well as an education district health service unit for the 7 education districts across Trinidad and Tobago. These persons assist schools basically, Madam Speaker, that they keep records for these tests that come in positive, both negative. They also keep track, Madam Speaker, of persons that are in quarantine that need to come back out to these schools, as well as first responders.
Member for St. Anne's East. It was raised before, and now I have observed that you are in breach of Standing Order 4410. So I caution you at this moment to proceed without reading your script, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I apologize. Some of these 55 positive cases have been reported from since the 4th of October 2021. Allow me to list a couple of these schools that have had these positive cases. Shiva Boys Hindu College, Irie High School, Princestown East Secondary School, Bishop Honesty High School, Mason Hall Secondary School, Tobago, to name a few. Upon these cases, the CMO was informed and contacted, and these cases were immediately brought to the attention of these secondary schools, Madam Speaker. Schools were immediately shut down, and these schools were assigned to be sanitized, Madam Speaker. After which, those that were in contact with these persons were put under quarantine and also tested to ensure that we curb this spread. Madam Speaker, we are aware that the constant increase in death with these positive cases have caused us, and we suggest that we implement hybrid learning for our Form 4s to Form 6 students. Madam Speaker, we're not saying completely online learning. We understand that some students have to be present and have to be there face-to-face at school, inclusive of students that are science, physical education, and among the few others. We suggest, Madam Speaker, that Forms 1 to 3s be kept within remote learning from the comfort of their homes where they are safe and secure, Madam Speaker, and have less interaction with the human population. We understand it's a socialization issue. We do understand, but we are aware that via social media and via other means of networking, this socialization could still happen. Madam Speaker, we know that remote learning will help curb this spread. So why not promote it within this education system? We suggest that our Form 1s to 3s be subdued to remote learning and our Form 5s to Form 6s hybrid learning, where we encourage those that are present at school to be present for only when it's necessary. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for St. Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute today. Madam Speaker, despite our nation providing numerous methods of combating the spread of COVID-19, the virus continues to be a threat to public health, as a member for Couva North discussed previously. The government has commendably made several vaccine options available, including Sinopharm, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. In addition to this, there's been extensive campaigning encouraging citizens to get the jab, and even free medical consultations at some sites. Yet still,
As of the 28th of November, the Ministry of Health dashboard states that only 641,799 Trinbagonian citizens are fully vaccinated out of a population of approximately 1.3 million. As such, the opposition proposes a mandatory vaccination policy be enforced to accelerate the country's goal of herd immunity, particularly in secondary schools, ages 12 to 18, and the workplace, as we believe these groups constitute a significant
Member for St.
portion.
Augustine, you are in breach of Standing Order 4410. Continue your presentation without reading from your script, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we believe these groups constitute a significant portion of our population. Certainly, we believe that this policy will reduce the prevalence of certain socio-economic issues plaguing our society today. For instance, there's a noted rise in the sexual abuse of children as domestic violence in Trinidad and Tobago. Statistics revealed by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services on April 27th, 2021, that there are 556 cases of violence against women and girls in 2020, and an increase to 826 cases for the comparative period, January to March 2021. Charlie Rampersad stated in her Guardian article, dated on the 24th of October 2021, that 1,800 children were sexually abused in 21 months, ranging from January 2020 to the 31st of September 2021. The pandemic poses as a problem as stay-at-home measures are compounding perpetrators' use of mechanisms of power and control which are used to isolate victims of abuse. Unemployment, economic instability, and stress may lead offenders to feel a loss of that power, which in turn may aggravate the frequency and severity of their abusive behavior. By mandating the vaccines, we will no longer have to enforce such strict lockdown measures, enabling citizens to safely return to the workforce in an attempt to ease their economic burdens. Additionally, this will allow for the separation of victims from their abusers and remove barriers caused by COVID-19 restrictions in order to access essential life-saving services such as counseling and justice resources. Secondly,
Member for St. Augustine, I'm cautioning you once more. Continue your presentation without reading from your script.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Secondly, an article titled Combating Crime Through Sport by Sean Fenters, dated on the 7th of October 2018, says that sport is something youths respond to. Youth, particularly in troubled communities, fall into a life of crime out of need or boredom. They tend to join gangs to be part of something bigger than them. He says we can use sport as a tool to provide today's youth with the possibility to develop into responsible, happier adults who feel that the
Madam Speaker, I'd like to raise 48.1 relevance.
Continue, Member for St. Augustine.
Lockdown and social distancing protocols have resulted in the closure of these recreational outlets which our youth would have used to engage and channel their energy in more positive directions. By implementing a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools targeting the 12 to 18 age group, we can eventually reopen the sporting programs that the youth use as a vehicle to curb crime, hence promoting a more sustainable lifestyle for the future of our country. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I would like to urge the government to beat the iron while it's hot and not let the wide variety of vaccines we have in our possession go to waste by waiting on citizens who are using vaccine hesitancy to dictate their actions. By mandating the COVID-19 vaccines, we can eventually move past this dilemma and restore our country to some level of normalcy. Instead of fighting a losing battle against the COVID-19 virus, when the WHO...
4410, Madam Speaker.
Member for St. Augustine, Standing Order 4410 has once again been raised. I caution you once more to continue reading to stop reading from your script. You have 1 more minute.
When the WHO clearly states that the foremost preventative measure against the transmission of the COVID-19 virus and its variants is vaccination. We can rather allocate our resources to help stabilize the economy and combat the pre-existing epidemic of violence and crime that plagued our society and continue to today. By targeting the secondary school age group who are the future of our country and the workforce who contribute to our economy, together we can aspire to overcome this pandemic with vaccination. So together we can achieve a sustainable and secure future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Finance, Member for Diego Martin, Northeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute this morning. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister came on TV on the 25th of November to address the nation and provide them with an insight as to what our current situation is, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but outside of the world as well. The member for Couva South came today and she said, Austria is on lockdown for the persons that don't want to get vaccinated. Now, from my research, Austria, who is a country that implemented a mandatory vaccination policy, is currently on lockdown due to being hit with their fourth wave, as well as protests that were put into place due to persons not wanting to get vaccinated and against the mandate of mandatory vaccination. Now, when Austria was hit with this fourth wave, it was said that they will not face the circumstances of it now economically, but coming into 2020 to 2022, Austria will see the effect of this lockdown. Now, it is no secret, Madam Speaker, that the pandemic had an economic effect on Trinidad and Tobago. I am not denying that. But with proper planning from the government, we are on the way to economic recovery. And Madam Speaker, it was even said by the IMF, and I will quote from what they said in their article form, in their 2021 article 4 mission. A strong economic recovery is projected for 2022. Please excuse me, there's an announcement. Right? A strong economic recovery is projected for 2022. Real GDP growth in 2022 is expected at 5% increase. Now they are anticipating.
Will the member give way?
I can't hear.
Will the member give way?
No, I will not give way.
Minister of Finance, you're muted.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. This increase in GDP that the IMF is discussing is due to an anticipated growth in oil and gas production that was decreased due to the pandemic. Now, it is not in any way that the government is saying that the economic effect of Trinidad and Tobago is not in a way of instability, but we are moving towards stability. The IMF also stated defeating the pandemic and supporting the economy are immediate priorities of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is true, we have implemented policies to assist. We have offered relief grants to support our citizens to hinder the strain that they are feeling now because of the pandemic. But without some time, we will not see the growth if we do not wait. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute. Today, I am proud to be a part of this formidable opposition bench as we beseech the government's expeditious intervention in adopting a formal mandatory vaccination policy. Madam Speaker, we have not come to paint a fairy tale to you. Alarmingly, our protective services are already overwhelmed. In an article posted by Luke TT on the 1st of November 2021, it was reported that Corporal Odell Guy succumbed to COVID-19, making him the 15th police officer to die from COVID-19. Madam Speaker, the question is asked, how many more? How many more officers have to lose their lives on the breadline for the government to fathom the severity of this calamity that we are presently facing? As at the 28th of November 2021, it was highlighted on the Ministry of Health's website that 90.9% of patients within the parallel healthcare system are presently unvaccinated. Comparatively, in a Sunday Express publication dated the 1st of November 2021, the discomforting headline was "Nurses Under Pressure," and this featured the testimony of nurse Joseph Smith Bethel as she lamented about the burnout ICU nurses face daily, and she went further to admonish the population to become fully vaccinated. Yet still this country battles with a high vaccine hesitancy rate. And the sad thing is there are many on our government bench who are ludicrously purporting that vaccination isn't the answer because they are saying that a vaccinated person can still contract COVID-19. However, I have come to resolutely offer a different perspective. According to an article written by Maura McCarthy on the 18th of October 2021 on the healthline.com, experts say that vaccinated persons stand a less likely risk to transmit COVID-19 because the viral load in a vaccinated person's nasal passage is drastically reduced with the presence of antibodies. Also, to validate my counter-argument, according to the CDC, in a report presented on the 30th of October 2021, unvaccinated persons stand a 6.1 times greater risk of contracting COVID-19 and an 11.3 times greater risk of actually dying from COVID-19. Now, Madam Speaker, after such information has been conveyed, anyone who doesn't see the need for vaccination is suffering from what I call a severe case of myopia, because even a blind man can see that vaccination is our best option. Yet our population here in Trinidad and Tobago chooses to remain obstinate. So what do? We have exhausted all other strategies. We have tried FAQs. We have tried using press conferences to educate the population on vaccination, all to no avail. So are we going to continue trotting along this onerous path of developing more marketing and educational strategies? As Nisha rightfully said, that making any sense? Madam Speaker, now is the time for us to try something new. Withal, the AG conveyed that such a mandate can be classified as derogation of our human rights. However, to me, that sentiment depicts the epitome of hypocrisy. Isn't it not this same government that passed a state of emergency that began on May the 15th and only ended on November the 17th, 2021? What about our freedoms then? It seems to me like the AG knows about derogation conveniently. But moreover, it is important for us to remember that policies need to be adapted based on national development as opposed to personal gratification, and as such, I will
Madam
repeat.
Speaker, 48-6, the member is imputing improper motive.
Overruled. Continue.
Right, as I was saying before I was abruptly interrupted, I will repeat the slogan, vaccine saves lives, and let me take you on a journey along memory lane. According to the WHO, in an article dated the 9th of December 2019, before the introduction of measles vaccines, in 1963, measles caused an estimated 2.6 million deaths each year. However, accelerated immunization activities have prevented 22.2 million deaths from measles from the period 2000 to the period 2018. Globally now, measles deaths have decreased by 73%. Madam Speaker, it is now lucidly clear that vaccination has worked in the past and it will continue to work once the due diligence is exercised. Thus far, the government has brought forward vacuous, tenacious, preposterous, ludicrous, and of course, frivolous arguments that have only proved to insult our intelligence by discrediting the efficacy of vaccines. However,
thank you, member for Chaguanas West, but your time has ended. Minister. Minister of Planning and Development, member for Aruka Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the privilege to contribute to this debate this afternoon. Madam Speaker, it seems rather ironic that the opposition has decided to put forward this motion just days after the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, addressed the nation on vaccine mandates around the world and urged the population to get vaccinated. Yet, member for Couva North asks, what is our alternative if we do not accept their motion? Well, Madam Speaker, I can tell you that what we are not doing is putting forward a motion before this House that is one, presents selective and limited research, two, is blanket, and three, clearly oblivious to existing regulations and the concept of development. Recital 4 of this motion states that the World Health Organization declared vaccination as the foremost preventative measure in the transmission of COVID-19 and its variants. Madam Speaker, on the 14th of July 2021, the World Health Organization explained, yes, vaccination prevents against severe disease and death. But it also stated that more evidence is needed in order to determine how well vaccines prevent against transmission. Case in point, Madam Speaker, is the Omicron variant of concern as of the 26th of November 2021, where the WHO technical lead, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, stated that there is limited information to determine the transmissibility of the variant and its impact on existing countermeasures such as vaccines. And as such, Madam Speaker, she noted that we should continue to wear our mask, wash our hands, social distance, and vaccinate. Madam Speaker, allow me to educate the opposition and specifically member for Couva North and member for St. Augustine, who argued that vaccination prevents transmission. Allow me to educate them of the importance of this three-letter word "and", Madam Speaker. In May 2021, the CDC director stated, and I quote, "Anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physically distancing." Madam Speaker, this position was reversed by said director just 2 months later, when they witnessed the surge in transmission due to the Delta variant. What this shows, Madam Speaker, is that other than the opposition is selective in their research, is that the foremost preventative measure in the transmission of COVID-19 and its variants is not solely vaccination, but social distancing, wearing your mask, washing your hands, and vaccination. So no, Madam Speaker, we are not questioning the efficacy of vaccination. That being said, proper planning would necessitate that the government takes the safest course. So, Madam Speaker, that is to say, even if all secondary school students are vaccinated, that does not mean that we are all clear to bring out hundreds of students at this time. It is ironic that member for Maruka Tableland argued that in order for all secondary school students to be vaccinated, in order for them to return to school, rather, they must be vaccinated because close physical contact is inevitable. Madam Speaker, taking into account that Trinidad has an internet penetration rate of 77% and that the Ministry of Education has been distributing tablets, laptops, and MiFi devices to students since the beginning of online learning, we propose that the safest alternative, as we have been doing at this time, is to continue remote learning for all students, with the exception of examination classes as set out in Section 9.2 of the Public Health Ordinance. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, the opposition is adamant on the need to impose mandatory vaccination in order to operate. I would like to bring 2 things to the attention of the opposition here. First, Section 8 of the Public Health Ordinance, which provides for businesses to operate as safe zones at this time. And secondly, a better alternative to their blanket mandatory vaccination policy would be to continue to facilitate remote working where possible through a national work from home policy, which the Minister of Planning and Development, Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, have indicated it's being developed to ensure productivity and that through the Ministry of Digital Transformation, a robust digital work environment can be. No, I will not in the interest of time. A robust digital work environment can be created to allow for Trinidad and Tobago to develop globally competitive businesses and increase their GDP. That, Madam Speaker, addresses the opposition leader's proposal that there should be collaboration between private and public sectors to stimulate the economy. Finally, Member for Cuba North have indicated that the reason to mandate vaccination.
Member for Aruka Maloney, your time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Barataria San Juan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the motion brought forward by the opposition this afternoon. As we know, in Trinidad and Tobago, we've been fighting an invisible war with the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 since 2020. As per the Ministry of Health media release, number 922, there are 456 new confirmed cases and 2,115 deaths. The motion today requests the implementation of mandatory vaccination policies within secondary schools and workplaces. The focal point of my contribution will be that of the workplace. Wednesday, the 17th of November 2021, at the JSC Social Services Public Administration sitting, Mr. Bruce Spencer, the head of Labor Market Information Unit at the Ministry of Labor, stated the findings of the effects of COVID-19 on employment. In comparison to quarter 2 of 2019 and quarter 2 of 2020, they were as follows: a fall in the labor force of 7,100 persons, a rise in unemployment of 4,400 persons, and 11,700 persons lost their jobs. Given these numbers and the rise of unemployment, wouldn't you say it's the role of a responsible government to implement legislation or at least a policy which guides employees and employers alike with response or relation to vaccination or mandatory vaccination policies? If a situation was to arise where an employee was unable to get any of the vaccines that are currently available in Trinidad and Tobago, what is their situation? If they why do they have to choose? Because they feel like they have to choose between losing their jobs and getting vaccinated. And why should they? If the policies the government comes up with are reasonable, then it will be accepted. If it is not, then it will be rejected. It is that simple. And if the government thinks that it will be rejected, then it is very concerning, because then the government is automatically thinking of making the policies unreasonable. The 24th of November 2021, Dunstan Bond, a reporter from the Trinidad Express newspaper, stated a quote from the Minister of Health. It was as follows, and I quote: "Over the past 3 months, we've had 14 children under the age of 1 year coming down with COVID-19, and 11 of those children are under 3 months old." The quote continues: "We don't have the hard number yet, but the vast majority is unvaccinated. What is happening is that the virus is being brought into the home setting and infecting the elderly and now very young babies. To address this new development, the principle of herd immunity needs to step in." It is, end quote. It is both saddening and upsetting to know how oblivious the government bench is about their own information being brought out into the public. The Minister of Health stated that herd immunity, with the new development of COVID-19 among very young babies and elderly, herd immunity needs to now step in. And for those that are unaware, according to the World Health Organization, the 28th of August 2020, herd immunity can only be achieved of a vaccinated population upwards of 70% in relation to COVID-19. And only with that immunity...
Would the member give way?
Sure.
Is that percent in relation to COVID-19's variants?
if the member would allow me to continue and listen carefully. World Health Organization stated on the 28th of August in relation to COVID-19, not its variants, that herd immunity needs to be achieved of upwards of a 70%.
Madam Speaker,
vaccination
4410, the
population.
member appears to be reading.
Member, Standing Order 4410 has been acknowledged. Continue, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 70% and up of a vaccinated population, and only with that immunity would the chain of transmission be broken. And in relation to what the Minister of Health stated with the chain of transmission, we have to then ask ourselves, who are the ones transmitting this virus to the very young babies and the elderly? Is it not reasonable to assume that it is the working population that is coming into the homes because they are the ones that are commonly outside the homes and bringing this virus to very young babies and the elderly? How exactly will vaccination break the chain of transmission, you might ask? According to BBC, John Campbell on September 2021, Dr. John Campbell, a health analyst from Carlisle, England, stated that vaccinated individuals are 50% less likely to contract COVID-19, and at that very same time, 50% less likely to transmit it to someone else, guaranteeing a 75% level of overall protection. We understand that this is not 100%, but it is still better than zero. It is a fighting chance, and the government should move to give the employees of this land that fighting chance. Or do we just continue benchmarking as a nation, doing exactly what the government says with our tails tucked between our legs? And whilst we wait, since the government is so contented on waiting.
Member for Barataria San Juan, your time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, member for Tunapuna. Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, member for Tunapuna.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute. Firstly, I'd like to commend the opposition for bringing forth this motion, as it shows they have a bit of consideration and care for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But, Madam Speaker, in all honesty, we cannot implement this mandatory vaccination policy, simply because we don't want the nation to rebel against us. Let it be known that it is one's choice to be vaccinated, and we don't want them to feel as we are forcing them to take this vaccine. We cannot line them up and call them one by one, calling them to take this jab. That is not going to happen. I'd also like to bring about the point that the Honorable Dr. Gaspidali, Minister of Education, stated that both vaccinated and unvaccinated students would be allowed to school. This was done to simply reduce alienation. Parents were complaining that only vaccinated students were allowed into school to be taught and to get an education, while their unvaccinated child sat at home. With they being back into schools, that was reduced. Also, for rural communities, students may have had lack of internet connectivity, a lack of technological devices such as laptops, tablets, and even cell phones, or they just didn't have a stable place at home to work onto their online classes. I would also like to say that there are mobile vaccination sites in rural areas. Two that I know of are Muruga and Princestown. They have tents, vehicles, and persons giving out these vaccinations at savannas, centers, and even promenades. Lastly, I would like to conclude and reiterate that taking the vaccine is one's choice, and with choices comes consequences. There are consequences for not being vaccinated. There are also consequences for being vaccinated. We urge the public to be vaccinated, Madam Speaker. Every day we are saying vaccinate to operate, vaccinate to operate, and that is what we want. The end goal is for the whole population of Trinidad and Tobago to be vaccinated. And with that being said, Madam Speaker, I'd like to conclude. Thank you.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak.
It concerns me that the government is so vehemently against mandating vaccines for workers when the economic and the health crisis that we have been enduring for nearly 2 years now is very much common knowledge. Our country has faced several lockdowns, a state of emergency which lasted 6 months, several waves of fear, disease, uncertainty, and the implications of these. Madam Speaker, I would like to believe that the government is aware of these implications, but after hearing the Minister of Finance shallow argument this afternoon, I don't think she is even aware of the state of the economy. If that is the case, then I think I may have to spell it out for her. So, due to these several lockdowns, the state of emergency, and grave uncertainty, our economy at the micro and macro level, as well as our people, have taken several hits. Shorter working hours, a fall in productivity, many sectors and businesses closing down, unemployment, and more. As such, our country has been struggling to adapt to this new normal as we are battling a worsening health crisis with a deflated economy. Madam Speaker, to add on to my colleague, according to data from the International Development Bank in 2020, 67% of low-income households in Trinidad and Tobago suffered from job loss. 67%. Additionally, according to the Central Statistical Office, 60 and 59% of low and middle income businesses shut down. Madam Speaker, these are the statistics for the fiscal year of 2020 alone and do not include the devastations of 2021. And while there are no official statistics for this year as yet, the budget report on October 4th noted that the central bank observed an increase in retrenchments and a decrease of 27% in job advertisements. Madam Speaker, this has created a population that is vulnerable amidst struggling to maintain a livelihood for themselves, amidst catering for others who are dependent on them. The government keeps saying that the motion is targeting the wrong population, but who is taking care of the elderly that the Attorney General is so focused on? The children at home that the Minister of Education suggested. And as my colleagues have rightfully said, who is bringing the virus home to the elderly, to the children, to the babies that have died? Madam Speaker, look at the number of COVID-19 positive cases and deaths since the reopening of the economy. Clearly, there cannot be livelihood without the safe reopening of the economy. And there cannot be an economy without livelihood. This is not a single-edged sword, as the government may think it is. Livelihood needs to be maintained, but can only be maintained if we protect our citizens in the best way possible. Madam Speaker, I will quote from the same budget report postulated by the government themselves, and it reads, "The most effective means of preventing the spread of an infectious disease is immunization." Madam Speaker, the budget report also stated, vaccination is the key to economic recovery. With that, I suggest that the government considers their own words, along with the policy that we are proposing today. If we do not mandate vaccines for workers, we will be stuck in a never-ending cycle of a worsening health and, by extension, economic crisis. Madam Speaker, I want to word it differently so that the government understands. What is going to happen when this large but salient population becomes infected? What is going to happen during the recovery period? Another cycle of job, income loss, a fall in productivity, unemployment, spread, disease. And I am glad that the Minister of Finance did not come here today and suggest to continue their COVID-19 reliefs, packages, subsidies, and food grants, when they have spent $5 billion on that and $9 billion in debt. Madam Speaker, according to the same budget report, the government has also spent $254 million trying to uphold the healthcare system for the pandemic. The government also noted that GDP in 2020 contracted by negative 1.2%. Unemployment as of 2020 was at 5.1%, a 2.4% increase from 2019. The inflation rates increased this year alone by 1.4%. Clearly, Madam Speaker, these grants, these subsidies, these food packages, they are nothing but simple and ineffective measures to achieve short-term stability. All of these statistics are in the budget reports. And yet, in the same budget reports, the government said vaccination is the key to economic recovery, but then followed up by saying that they spent $124 million on vaccines that are not being fully utilized.
Can the member give way?
No, my time is limited. Sorry. Madam Speaker, to me, the solution is as clear as daylight. But after the government came today with their nonsensical arguments, I can see why Trinidad and Tobago still has a cloud above our heads. Our economy, our people, their health, our health, and our future, they are all on the line. We are no longer at the time to have proactive measures. We are beyond that point. We can no longer take measures for short-term stability. We are beyond that point. So as the government
Member for Princestown, your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Housing and Urban Development, member for Arima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this debate. Firstly, let me begin by saying that there are a number of countries that currently have mandatory vaccination policies in place. For example, Australia, New Zealand, as well as Greece, and many other countries implemented mandatory vaccination policies. However, these countries in particular focused on areas as the healthcare workers, the more at-risk persons in society. According to ReutersNews.com, on the 15th of November 2021, Australia in late June made vaccinations mandatory for high-risk aged care workers as well as employees in quarantine hotels. Another example is New Zealand. Said in October, it would require workers in the healthcare department as well as the disabled sectors to be fully vaccinated. So, Madam Speaker, why can't we use these countries as an example to target the high-risk persons such as the healthcare workers in the society in our country? Madam Speaker, these persons face the virus every single day, and they also have family at home that they need to account for. And it was also reported that 4 nurses died of this COVID-19. So why not target these healthcare workers? And the government is not saying that the vaccines are not effective. We are just saying that we should allow our people to make a choice. Now, let's go into the countries that has no mandates at this point in time, yet still their vaccinations rates are extremely high. Madam Speaker, Florida banned strict vaccine mandates in schools and in businesses. Since COVID-19 started, since this pandemic started, Florida implemented no COVID-19 measures, not even a mask mandate, and no lockdowns were enforced. And the governor even said for himself, Madam Speaker, and I quote, "It is important to speak up for people's individual rights to make decisions for themselves," end quote. He relied on the responsibility of his people to take action on their own so that they can understand the seriousness of this matter. And this allowed his people to make a choice, Madam Speaker, rather than being forced. And their vaccination rate is 61%, which is one of the highest in the US. So why can't we let our citizens make a choice in this matter, Madam Speaker? Furthermore, let's go into the countries that has the highest vaccination rate, yet still they're in another surge of infection. For example, Austria, vaccination rate is 77%, yet still they're in their 4th lockdown. Another example is Gibraltar, where the vaccination rate is 144.8%, and they recently stated that they will be canceling all Christmas official celebrations due to the rise in cases between the months of October and November. So why is it the countries with the highest vaccination rates are experiencing these high surge and are locking back down, Madam Speaker? This just goes to show that as more and more persons become vaccinated, the less they may utilize the other safety measures such as social distancing and mask wearing, which was stated by the WHO to be a preventative measure.
Being vaccinated does not mean that you cannot contract and transmit the disease, as stated by my colleagues. These measures must go hand in hand, being vaccinated or not. And as of right now, our country does not need to implement this COVID-19 vaccination policy to infringe on the rights of our citizens. Let them make a choice, Madam Speaker. They did not have a choice to face this pandemic. They did not have a choice in the lockdowns. They did not have a choice in the closure of business and for unemployment even. So why not let them make the choice now so that they can understand and they can make the choice to for the betterment of themselves, Madam Speaker.
Will the member give way?
Unfortunately, my time is limited. Our government will continue to educate the public on the vaccines and allow them to make choices and further enforce the other measures that were in place, because it was said that it needs to work hand in hand in order to reduce the number of cases and deaths, not just being vaccinated. And with that, I would thank you.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Member for Port of Spain South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this debate today. We, the government, are not here to question the efficacy of the vaccine, Madam Speaker. We are simply here to say there are other measures by which we can encourage the population, Madam Speaker. The member for Bartaria, San Juan, stated that they want to achieve herd immunity. Let's look, for example, at New Zealand. They have herd immunity. 83% of their population is vaccinated, yet they're still under lockdown because of the Delta variant, Madam Speaker. As my former government members have stated, the vaccine alone cannot prevent one from contracting the virus, Madam Speaker. Although one is fully vaccinated, they still need to adhere to the other policies put in place. Wearing a mask, washing your hands regularly, and social distancing, Madam Speaker.
Remember, give way.
No, my time is limited. Additionally, the government have put in place protocols for the new variant. We have imposed travel restrictions for the following countries. And I quote, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, end quote. We have restricted persons coming from those countries to enter Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, because of this new variant, which is still undergoing
Madam Speaker, 48-1.
Member, in accordance with Standing Order 48-1, I kindly ensure that henceforth your contribution is relevant to the motion moved today.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Lastly, I would like to state, by implementing a mandatory vaccination policy for schools, for secondary schools, would increase the dropout rate of students. Why is that? Because this group of individuals, if they feel like if they are being forced to do something, they would not embrace it. They would not adhere to it, Madam Speaker. Why target this population? Why not target the high-risk population? For example, when the vaccine first came to Trinidad and Tobago, it was made available for healthcare workers, the elderly, and persons with comorbidity, because they are high-risk patients to contract this virus, Madam Speaker. And with that, I thank you.
Member for Chaguanas East.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to present on this most pertinent matter. Madam Speaker, I do not understand for what purpose the government has come here today to speak as if we, the opposition, asked them for the stars on the moon. As any parent would attest to, Trinidad and Tobago is no stranger to mandatory vaccination. In accordance with the Public Health, Nursery Schools and Primary Schools Immunization Act, the children of Trinidad and Tobago are already required to be vaccinated against measles, yellow fever, and polio, among other communicable diseases. And it is for that reason Trinidad and Tobago has reported 0 cases of the above-mentioned diseases, as according to the WHO Vaccine Preventable Diseases Monitoring Systems Summary for 2020. And Madam Speaker, those who are unvaccinated are at increased risk of not only contracting the COVID-19 virus as well as its variants, but too, once contracted, they are at increased risk of hospitalization and death. This is according to the WHO's Q&A for vaccines, last updated on October 7th. Madam Speaker, by implementing this policy, we can ensure not only the safety of our secondary school students, but we can work to fight against the transmission of the virus in the school environment. Referring back to the motion, Madam Speaker, the WHO has named vaccination the foremost preventative measure in the fight against the transmission of COVID-19. And this is, of course, supported by the arguments raised by my colleagues. And it's not as if this government is unaware of the particular challenge that transmission presents in the school environment, as is shown by the Ministry of Education's own guidelines for the physical reopening of schools, which outlines several points as to prevent not only the congregation of students, but to the transmission of the virus among students. Now, Madam Speaker, it brings no joy to my heart to be the bearer of bad news for this government. However, the extent to which the coronavirus is present within our schools was not, I don't believe it's truly appreciated by our Minister of Education. On November 10th, the Ministry of Health's media conference, in that conference, it was stated by epidemiologist Dr. Avery Hines that from October 25th to November 5th, in the St. Patrick Education District, there were 5 positive cases of COVID-19. In the Northeastern Educational District, there were 12 positive cases of COVID-19. In St. George East Education District, there were 16 positive cases of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, across the 7 education districts of Trinidad and Tobago, there were 55 positive cases. Now, Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Social Development and Family Planning so helpfully asked, why do we target those in secondary schools when it is the elderly or those who are at particular risk that should instead be targeted by such a motion? Madam Speaker, as any individual will attest, every child is a child of 2 parents. Every grandchild is a grandchild of 4 grandparents. And it only takes 1 member of the household for the entire household to be infected with the COVID-19 virus. Madam Speaker, the implementation of this policy will not only serve to protect our youth, as have the vaccine mandates of the past, it will not only serve to slow the transmission of the virus in the school environment among our youths to protect them and safeguard them, it will also serve to protect and slow the transmission of the virus across our entire nation. Madam Speaker, though I would wish to resume my seat, there are some matters that must be addressed. There are some matters which must be addressed. As the Minister of Health has stated, if I may quote, we stand with our trusted professionals. Madam Speaker, I had asked a member to give way so she may enlighten us on who these trusted professionals are. She refused to comment. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Labour has stated that that vaccination does not reduce transmission. I do not know where he had gotten this claim. And unfortunately, we will never know, as when asked to give way, he had claimed that he speaks the truth. Such outrageous claims from this government. And Madam Speaker, I do not know if our minister of Rural Development and Local Government was paying very much attention to today's proceedings when it was asked who said that we would, when it was stated that we would line up individuals so that they can take the jab. I do not recall any member on my bench making such claims. Madam Speaker, clearly this government has come here unprepared and are not listening to what the opposition is saying. And without cooperation from both sides, how can anything productive be done? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Youth Development and National Service, Member for Lahokota Telparu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute in this debate. Now, this afternoon, the opposition has brought forth a motion asking the government to implement a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces. Now, although I commend them on this initiative, especially given the rise in the number of cases and deaths, such policy is not the best solution, Madam Speaker. We are currently between a rock and a hard place, and our only way out seems to be through personal responsibility or action taken by the government, which is why we are here today. However, this motion seems may do more harm than good in these circumstances. Now, as much as we want to return to some form of normalcy, Madam Speaker, we are still in the midst of this pandemic, and in the interest of public health, where we can encourage remote learning and working, we should. To expand on the point of remote learning, Madam Speaker, over the last academic year, there was a switch to virtual schooling, where students were engaged in virtual learning, and in spite of hiccups, it was still successful, and students were able to go out and complete practicals and written exams. Now, my colleagues on the opposition would have tried to compare the CXC results from 1 year of virtual schooling to multiple years of physical schooling, which is not feasible because we were navigating through uncharted territory and we were learning as we go. However, with the experience gained from this switch, we should continue to find ways to improve on a hybrid system of learning and not only moving it to get students vaccinated and back out to school. And Madam Speaker, we are aware that schools play a much bigger part in the development of students than just academically. But organizations such as NGC and even schools themselves have found ways to encourage the arts and other areas, even though remotely. That is what we should be aiming for, Madam Speaker. There is no rush to have all students out to school at this time, so implementing a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces is not required. Additionally, vaccination should not be a criteria right now to get an education, as in spite of the ones that we have before, as one of my colleagues on the opposition would have mentioned. He talked about measles and all these other vaccines. But these things, persons are not as hesitant to get their children have these vaccines because we can see the long-term effects and it isn't harmful. But persons are hesitant because nobody knows how down the line how this vaccine may be affecting us. So some level of hesitancy must be expected. Also, Madam Speaker, as much as the opposition would like to think that this policy is the one decision needed to solve to curb the spread of the virus currently, as it will suddenly send the number of cases and people dying down, that is not the case. We are hitting record numbers in this third wave, and the percentage of people fully vaccinated now is much higher than it was during the last wave. Additionally, becoming fully vaccinated takes time, during which persons will still have to calculate their own personal responsibility and take into account the personal irresponsibility of others. In closing, Madam Speaker, I would like to reiterate that yes, we want and encourage persons to get vaccinated, but regardless of vaccination status, protocols still need to be followed. Dr. Ira Narayan Singh said, and I quote, "I have a strong belief that everybody is going to get this virus. So our goal should be to slow down the rate at which persons are contracting and spreading this virus, especially as new variants are being identified, which would make this motion counterproductive as it encourages gathering to an even greater extent. What we should be considering, Madam Speaker, are ways to ensure the safety of the entire population, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, And the best way to do this is through safety protocols, personal responsibility, and encouraging distance wherever we can. Threatening the livelihoods of the unvaccinated in an effort to achieve herd immunity to hopefully lower cases and to return to some form of normalcy is not. The public was warned, however, about what may happen if numbers continue to rise, and we are giving them a chance to take heed before any policy, especially the one being proposed, is implemented. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Member for Toko Sangre Grande.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to be a part of this debate. Now, we are all here to attempt to figure out why it is the opposition leader is leading a motion for the implementation of a policy for the mandatory administration of COVID-19 vaccines in the secondary school and workforce population, which seems extremely bizarre at this point in time. Recital line 3 of the motion states, and I quote, "For more than 18 months, the novel coronavirus and its variants continues to be a major threat to public health, social, and economical structures of society," which is obvious but noted. My question to the opposition leader is, does he see this as an actual solution going forward? Would the implementation of this policy make a huge impact? On the 30th of March 2021 would have been when Trinidad and Tobago received their first shipment of the COVID-19 vaccines. Roughly 7 to 8 months, Madam Speaker, but the opposition wants to mandate these vaccines already. That is ridiculous. As I acknowledge, the World Health Organization has stated that vaccinations are the foremost preventative measure against the global fight of the virus and its variants. But this is the same organization that has boldly stated mandatory vaccination policies are not ethically justified if the bad outweighs the good. Also, recital line 4 of the motion states information that basically says vaccination stops transmission of the virus. Opposition bench, please come. No, I would not. Opposition bench, please come back with a motion that has no discrepancies because the vaccine does not stop transmission. And the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley would have also quoted this on his address to the nation on the 25th of November 2021. Now, it is understandable that the grounds for this motion is our high infection rates. But, Madam Speaker, we are not the only one experiencing these alarming rates. A couple of our neighboring countries are experiencing the same series
Madam
of
Speaker,
events.
48-1.
Overruled. Continue, Member.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Couple of our neighboring countries are experiencing the same series of events. But do we see them implementing such a policy? No, because if it were as simple as just snapping our fingers and automatically this policy would be implemented and magically our rates would just disappear, that would have been amazing. But that is not the case here. Madam Speaker, we as the government are doing the best that we can with regards to returning to some form of normalcy, as well as beating this virus as every other government is doing. And I personally feel as though if we were to implement this policy, those who are quote-unquote anti-vax will protest, and the opposition would claim that we are afraid of a little backlash from the citizens. But that is not the case, Madam Speaker. It is the mere fact that this policy is going to have a negative rippling effect, and instead of help our rates, it is actually going to worsen it. Madam Speaker, this policy is going to be a logistical nightmare. How is it the opposition is proposing we implement such an extensive policy? And to what extent do we need to go to ensure that this policy is upheld within society? And have they looked at if we have enough resources, especially human resources, Madam Speaker, to ensure that this policy is properly carried out? Madam Speaker, every day, more and more people are deciding to get vaccinated after doing proper research of their own, that is, because this is a hard decision for most to make. And implementation of this policy is going to cause even more vaccine hesitancy and an uproar in society. I'd like to conclude on the suggestion that we don't have this policy implemented. based on the fact that it is going to do more harm than good. And decisions about a mandatory vaccination policy should be, number one, supported by best available evidence, and number two, be made by us, the government, in a manner that is fair, transparent, non-discriminatory, as well as take into account the input of all affected parties, which is primarily the citizens at this time, whose views and inputs the opposition apparently has failed to take into account. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Tabakit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute in this debate. Now, Madam Speaker, I am a bit confused as the Attorney General said that out of the 25 deaths, 16 were elderly. But Madam Speaker, aren't all lives important? Aren't all the lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago important? Madam Speaker, the Minister of Health said that we shouldn't traumatize and force the population. However, Madam Speaker, isn't this the same government who is campaigning day and day, night after night, promoting vaccination? Madam Speaker, I must say, for Trinidad and Tobago to continue trading on the global market, we must first have a healthy population, by extension, a healthy labor force. And the way we can achieve this is through vaccination. Madam Speaker, the government also needs to realize that not only the economy was affected, but also the livelihoods of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, according to the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, the unemployment rate increased to 5.1% in the second quarter of 2020 compared to 4.2% in the first quarter. Madam Speaker, another point, the government should also realize that by not having a vaccinated population, it can potentially hinder our trade and business relationships. For example, with our neighboring island, Antigua and Barbuda, who have implemented a mandatory vaccination policy. So, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Planning and Development said that we should continue remotely. We should continue learning remotely. That is our students. But Madam Speaker, they fail to address and fail to realize that not all jobs can be done remotely. Madam Speaker, what about hairdressers, barbers, daycare workers? Madam Speaker, according to the head of the Labor Market Information Unit, the Ministry of Labor, in the manufacturing sector alone, there was 16,700 job losses. And Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago is one of the main manufacturers in the Caribbean. So these numbers are very alarming. Madam Speaker, in wholesale and retail, there were 10,600 job losses. Madam Speaker, also according to the head Labor Market Information Unit of the Ministry of Labor, there have been between March 2021 and September 2021, 1,019 reports of trade disputes concerning termination of services. Madam Speaker, I ask the government today, what is your next move? Madam Speaker, this is why the opposition have brought forward this motion to implement vaccination, implement a mandatory vaccination in secondary schools and the workplace. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, according to the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Economic Bulletin of July 2021, preliminary estimates suggest activity in the energy sector in the first quarter of 2021 have declined by 13.4%. Madam Speaker, we are seeing decline all over Trinidad and Tobago, and this is affecting the livelihoods of all our citizens. So again, as the motion rightfully said, the virus continues to be a major threat to public health and the social and economic structures of society. Madam Speaker, according to the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, press release on the 14th of October 2021, and I quote, socioeconomic vulnerability is highly correlated with the severity of COVID-19 infection and mortality. Without health, there can be no sustainable economic recovery. Madam Speaker, I urge the government, let us take into consideration all lives of Trinidad and Tobago. Do not be afraid.
Can the member give way?
Sure.
Are all lives equally at risk from this disease?
Madam Speaker, the World Health Organization have declared vaccination as a foremost preventative measure, meaning that all lives are at risk. Madam Speaker, while some groups may be at a higher risk, the end comment is all lives are at risk. Madam Speaker, I urge the government, I tell the government, democracy comes with obligation and responsibility. It is your responsibility to protect all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So we, the opposition, came here today to call on the government to implement this mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and the workplace, so that, as I stated, all lives will be protected. Do your job, government. Do your job. Your position comes with responsibility. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of National Security, member for Laventille West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to enter this debate. Madam Speaker, I'd like to reinforce what my bench has previously been saying, in that we are pro-vaccine. We continue to encourage our citizens to take the vaccine by trying to persuade them and doing our vaccination drives. The opposition bench is continuously pinning at us as to why are we waiting on the citizens. Madam Speaker, it is because you cannot force people. Madam Speaker, we have to allow the citizens to take their own personal responsibility into their own hands. Madam Speaker, I want to present to you some statistics that may prove to you that it is not only that some people are not vaccinated, but it may be that persons are not taking their personal responsibility seriously. We have laid out regulations to prevent the spread of this virus. Madam Speaker, listen to this. Our citizens have been 1,459 citizens have been tasked with wearing their mask, Madam Speaker, and they have failed to do so. They were issued tickets. Madam Speaker, 80 persons were arrested, and the total offenses are 1,539. These statistics are presented to me by WPC Goddard from November the 1st to November 29th. Madam Speaker, these are the statistics for this month. If our citizens are at this level of resilience against our regulations in this month alone, you could imagine for the rest. Madam Speaker, I am simply trying to say that it may not only be that persons are unvaccinated, and that it may be that persons are not listening to the regulations which we have in place. Madam Speaker, we, the government, will continue to encourage our citizens to take the vaccine, and my officers will continue to monitor the citizens and ensure that they are not breaking these regulations that we have in place. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, member for Diego Martin Central.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I would like to acknowledge the concern of the opposition, although I find it a bit preemptive and a bit misplaced. The opposition today brings a motion that seems like a haphazardly placed plaster while the nation suffers from chickenpox. As the Minister of CARICOM and Foreign Affairs, I would like to just bring forward the idea that opposition, your motion will not just operate in a silo. So let me give you a bit of context. Right now, we are seeing reactions in many of our neighboring Caribbean countries, such as Guadeloupe and Martinique, who have now had France delay the mandate rollout in those islands due to riots and protests that have injured police officers and journalists. Today, as we speak, St. Vincent teachers are having a sit-in since Friday, just because they feel as if their lives and their jobs and their livelihoods are at risk. These things happen, Madam Speaker, when people do not feel as if the government is operating in their best interest. This is where the vaccine hesitancy that the opposition just so cavalierly dismisses comes into play. I'd like to quote now from the WHO Ethical Considerations and Caveats with regards to mandatory vaccination, which was published on April 13, 2021. I quote, Madam Speaker, "Policymakers have a duty to carefully consider the effect that mandating vaccination could have on public confidence and public trust, and particularly on confidence in the scientific community and public trust in vaccination generally. If such a policy threatens to undermine confidence and public trust, it might affect both vaccine uptake and adherence to other important public health measures, which can have an enduring effect. In particular, the coercive power that governments or institutions display in a program that undermines voluntariness could have unintended negative consequences for vulnerable or marginalized populations." Now, Madam Speaker, we have been seeing this in these same reactions I have outlined in our neighboring Caribbean countries. Madam Speaker, I would like to bring forward to the opposition. They are rushing for another move. What's your next move? What's your next move? We are in it right now. We have just come out of a significantly long SOE. We are in a transitionary period. At this point in time, the government is not about to just cavalierly swap one draconian measure for another. We need to be careful. This is the breadline. This is people's livelihoods we are talking about. This is not to be taken lightly. Right now, we also need to consider our context in terms of how we look internationally. What are our international relations as well as our international image going to get out of a mandate like this at this point in time that is seen as flighty and as a simple matter, according to the member of the opposition earlier who said it is a matter of trial and error? This is not a matter of trial and error. This is not to be taken lightly, and I will reiterate that until the cows come home. Right now, the government, not at this point in time, thank you. Right now, the government is focusing on our shift to personal and public responsibility in order to uphold the public health ordinances that we currently have in place. We are not a month out of the SOE, and the opposition is rushing to put this bandage, this blanket bandage, over a society that is now trying to adapt to the next new phase as we go forward. We as the government have to consider all of our stakeholders and the effect on the various sectors, as well as our national image and the relationship between the government and its citizens. Such a mandate being hastily thrown to the wind would rupture relations and rupture that sense of trust and transparency that we are trying to build and achieve and maintain as we move forward as the government of this country. The vaccine by itself, as my colleagues have stated, is not the fix-all cure. This goes hand in hand with protocols, and implementing such a mandate just high and dry is not, I don't know what the opposition thinks, but it is not just going to allow life to go back to normal. I rest with that. However, I would like to just reiterate quickly, we are not going to blindly plunge our country into another state of instability at this point in time. The motion is hasty, it's irrational, and it's not practical when you take into consideration the circumstances and context that we are dealing with in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, we are not yet at the end of our rope. We are simply 8 months into our vaccine campaign. I ask the opposition, I implore that they go back, reconsider, and reevaluate the motion from a viewpoint of feasibility. Madam Speaker, I take this opportunity just to simply close on a reminder for my fellow parliamentarians. We are here to serve and to represent the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, not lord over them. And to correct the previous opposition member who spoke about our responsibility. It is our responsibility, Madam Speaker, to consider our country's context and our needs, and in order to be mindful of our citizens and what they feel, because we as the government and the governing body are here to make decisions on behalf of the men and women on the street who have to live with the consequences and the implications which follow such decisions therein. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I rise in support of this motion and in support of the opposition leader. Madam Speaker, I have sat there and I have listened to government member upon government member come to this house with nothing but hypocrisy. Madam Speaker, I call them by their name. Thy name is hypocrisy. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Education talks about how as soon as cases shown up in school, they shut down the school. Madam Speaker, how many times must a school be forced to shut down? How many more people must die, Madam Speaker? How many more? What about the students who are at home, Madam Speaker? I want the government bench to think about this, because there's a population in Trinidad and Tobago of students who are at home. They have devices, they have Wi-Fi, they have internet, but they're still not attending school for the simple reason their parents aren't working and they need to send the children out for money to work. Madam Speaker, did the opposition not think about this? Did the government apologies not think about this? There are students in Trinidad and Tobago whose only form of education is when they physically attend school. Madam Speaker, before I get this lost, the Minister of CARICOM just spoke about the breadline and personal responsibility of a student, of the citizen, and talking about the public health ordinance. But I say again, thy name is hypocrisy. Because if you go into the public health ordinance under section 8, subregulation 2, and I quote, the owner or operator of a business listed in subregulation 1 shall, subject to subregulation 3, ensure that A, all of his employees are vaccinated and are in possession of valid vaccination cards, a copy of which can be kept at the business. And it goes further. This is the safe zone policy that we are talking about, Madam Speaker. And it is called safe zone policy for a reason. But my question is, who are they trying to fool with this hidden vaccination policy, mandatory vaccination policy in the Safe Zone Act? I digress. Madam Speaker, let me talk a little bit through you, of course, to the Attorney General. Attorney General, Section 4A, liberty must, if this right is infringed, it must be shut down, she says. But Madam Speaker, I am very confused if this Attorney General even knows the law. This is why she lost the case between Collymore and the AG, where no right enshrined in 405 are absolute. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General should go back to law school. Then she came talking about imprisoned citizens for not taking the... I don't know where she got that from, Madam Speaker. A lawyer talking this? Someone who studied law speaking this, Madam Speaker? Where did the fines come out from? Nobody spoke about fines. Nobody spoke about imprisonment.
Can the member give way?
No, apologies, I withdraw that. No, you cannot. Minister of Labour gain education based on a vaccination card, Madam Speaker. What about the Public Health, Nursery School and Primary Schools Act in the in legislation? What about diphtheria, polio? Madam Speaker, I am quite unsure, but as my time draws near, I want to remind this government one thing. Their job is to protect the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Their job is to protect the lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And if the Attorney General remembers, because she subjectively quoted law and she selectively quoted it, Madam Speaker, if she remembers the word right before liberty, it is life. Life first and foremost. Government, I beg you today, protect the life and the lives of the citizens that put you here. Don't just sit and take the easy way out, as you are so known for doing. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Minister of Trade and Industry, member for Point Fortin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute today. As mentioned previously, the word mandatory, as defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is obligatory or required by a rule. Now, to pair this with a society riddled with fear and panic in this current time is not only short-sighted, but downright irresponsible of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The problem with the motion prepared before us today is not the efficacy of the vaccine, because yes, it has been tried and proven that it is the foremost effective measure for our battle with COVID-19. But mandating such a policy would require the loss of autonomy for our workers within the industries. This is a clear violation of their human rights, and I quote, "The Patients' Charter of Rights and Obligations of the Southwest Regional Health Authority, May 2007, Section 9.2, which states that no person should be subjected to any procedure without their voluntary and informed consent and should be informed of all medical alternatives at all times, no questions asked." Furthermore, the forcing of our workforce to comply with such a motion would result in constraints in an already crippled economy, where persons would face terminations of contracts, loss of jobs, and even lack of education when they are not able to comply with such a mandate. This blanket motion brought before us can be seen as oppressive by the man on the street and in turn be counterproductive. This motion could trigger rebellion, protests, and these protests would increase the number of members gathering, where this would in turn bring about a further rise in spread of cases. Madam Speaker, over the period of the state of emergency, from May 15th to November 17th, over 19,000 persons were issued face mask tickets. 19,000 persons issued face mask tickets. Face masks which are required by legislation, by law, and they blatantly disregarded. So what do you expect? What can we expect by the members towards another mandate? Currently, Trinidad and Tobago has the highest figures recorded worldwide.
Did the member give way?
No, my time is limited, sorry. Currently, we have some of the highest figures recorded throughout the world, where we have the highest number of deaths per million, increase per capita, and over the last 7 days, over 600 cases on a daily average. The highest we have faced as a country throughout this period. This could be attributed to the relaxed, nonchalant attitude of the members of the public who, yes, understandably, have been home for 18 months and they want to get out, but they are outside and not following the proper protocols. The protocols that we have already implemented. So what good is implementing this other policy going to do? At this stage of our fight against the pandemic, the public must remember that the vaccine does not stop transmission. It does not prevent you from getting the virus. I quote, on May 13, 2021, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced that the fully vaccinated persons no longer had to wear masks. However, they reversed this policy on July 28th as a result of the surge of cases. What the people of Trinidad and Tobago need at this point in time is how to proceed after being vaccinated. They need to be educated. The man on the street needs to understand that the workplace policy implemented in May 2020, by the government of Trinidad and Tobago needs to be followed now more than ever. People still need to continue with the regular mask wearing, the regular sanitizing, and the regular social distancing. So without these three, there will be continual spread. So without these measures being put in place right now, with people disregarding this blatantly, legislation and more, what can we expect by an increase in further legislation? We do plead as the government of Trinidad and Tobago with the citizens to take this vaccine, because we're hoping that on their own they realize the benefits of this vaccine. And yes, our approach has been working slowly but surely. In the last 3 days, just about 2,000 persons have received one out of a 2-dose regime. 2,000 new persons in 3 days. Yes, this number is small in comparison to our general population, but it is working, Madam Speaker. So as the people understand the situation unfolding right before them, those that are hesitant are slowly coming around. They are slowly taking the vaccine out of their own merit. But Madam Speaker, if we move to mandate such a motion at this point in time, this will prove detrimental with the increased rebellion, the increased protests, and furthermore, this will result in a rise in further cases and overall result in the same thing we are trying to prevent. I thank you.
Thank you, Member for Point Fortin. Before I continue, members, earlier the behavior of the member for Pointer Pair was not acceptable when the member for San Fernando West asked to be given way. I didn't say anything at that point in time, and I apologize. That type of behavior is unacceptable in this parliament sitting today. So I kindly ask that for the rest of the sitting, that that type of behavior not be practiced. In continuing, Prime Minister, member for Diego Martin West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. I first want to thank my ministers for their stellar contributions and also their resilience and determination in the fight against this virus. COVID-19 has been unlike anything we have seen before. It has been a grueling 20 months, and unfortunately, the fight still lives on. But I want to remind the opposition that vaccination has always been this government's top priority in eradicating this virus. We did not spend 12 months battling the geopolitical whims and international countries and organizations in order to get Trinidad and Tobago a steady supply of WHO-approved vaccines for the opposition to flippantly disregard our efforts. Achieving herd immunity is our foremost priority.
Madam Speaker,
but how we...
Member, I don't acknowledge that the member for Diego Martin West is reading. Member, could you continue, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But how we get there can change the very fabric of our Constitution and set a very dangerous precedent. Are we prepared to further compromise civil liberties, like individuals' right to self-determination, for a chance to reach herd immunity through mandatory vaccination? The answer is no, not right now. Madam Speaker, mandatory vaccination at this time is not a proportionate response to the goal we are trying to achieve. And the reason why is because we can get herd immunity without it. Let's look at the numbers, shall we? On November 24, 2021, the ministry administered 2,392 new doses. On November 25th, 1,943. On November 26th, 1,483. November 27th, 2,196. November 28th, 1,208. Based on the data from the Ministry of Health, it's clear that the vaccination rate hasn't fallen so drastically that the program has stalled. In fact, it's in an upward climb. The trend suggests continuous movement. Therefore, that eliminates a major part of what we would consider when deciding if mandatory vaccination is necessary, which is proportionality of response. If persons are still voluntarily getting the vaccine, then is it ethical to make it mandatory? The decision to compromise civil liberty is not taken lightly, and such interference by the government of Trinidad and Tobago must be justifiable. Mandatory vaccination is a last resort.
Madam, would the member give way?
No, thank you. We have not exhausted all our options to increase vaccination rates. We as a government haven't crossed that threshold yet. We still believe in the people. We haven't given up on them. Why have you? Moreover, Madam Speaker, the opposition fails to consider the legal ramifications and the economic ramifications such a mandate
Martin West, the standing order was raised earlier, and now I observe the breach of standing order 4410. So I'd like to caution you on this time to continue without reading.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As previously stated by the Attorney General, Faris Alwari, Trinidad and Tobago has spent $14.5 million on COVID-19 legal fees alone. defending COVID-19 policies from mask mandates to public health ordinances. All of them were challenged by this opposition. What exactly is stopping citizens from taking the government to court for this mandate? Under the Equal Opportunities Act, citizens can claim that the vaccine is against their religion. And unlike with medical exemptions, we will have a difficult time disapproving this in court. Taxpayers' dollars will go down the drain defending a policy with so many loopholes. The member of Couva South said that we can give citizens of exemption certificates. What exactly will happen when all eligible citizens sign up for an exemption? We cannot prove religious exemptions in court. It is going to be a difficult task, and we are going to spend millions of dollars trying to get through to the genuineness of those claims. And then what happens? We're back to square one with a limited vaccination rate. I want to reiterate, Madam Speaker, that mandatory vaccination is not proportionate to the goal we are trying to achieve. But I also want to stress that this government is not taking the stance of not ever. We're saying not right now. Thank you.
Now that all would have contributed, I call upon the Leader of the Opposition and Member for Siparia to respond to the issues raised. Member, you have 9 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to first thank the members of the opposition who have consistently been the voices of reason throughout this proceedings. Let me begin by addressing the contributions of some of the members of the government. The Honorable Minister of Education has proposed that the implementation of a hybrid teaching model. My apologies. As though she was proposing this from the opposition bench. If you, in your capacity as the Minister of Education, believe it is the best option, do it. Help our children. The Honorable Minister of Labor explained that the state of emergency served its purpose to reduce the transmission rate. But I ask you, sir, have you looked at yesterday's Ministry of Health publication? Our current total active positive cases, Madam Speaker, from yesterday alone, is 14.9% of all total cases that we have had in our country since March 2020. Is that a form of success? Several ministers have alluded to the protests in Austria and other countries that arose from mandatory vaccination policy as a deterrent to supporting progress, it seems. However, where was this worry of public response, when our inflation rate increased? Madam Speaker, when our unemployment rate increased, when the price of gas saw a continuous increase on a yearly basis, where was this worry? The mandatory vaccination policy, the opposition proposes, would directly target the portion of our population that represents the largest demographic groups, our workforce and secondary school students, who are statistically at least risk of dying from COVID-19, but who are most likely to allow for the transmission of this virus. Groups that the WHO have approved for vaccination based on the vaccines that we have available. As the opposition member for Muruga Tableland rightly put, policy is proactivity. We need to support proactive approaches to mitigating the deaths related to COVID-19 and the transmission of COVID-19. For context, for everyone in this parliament, the amount of deaths that occurred in November alone from COVID-19 single-handedly trumps the total murder rate reported via the TTPS website, which stood at 345 between January to October. Madness. How are you not seeing that this is a public health crisis? Have you not seen with our own eyes why this mandate is reasonably justifiable? Why it is pertinent to the issues that we are facing in our country? How much more evidence do you need? Madam Speaker, we can throw facts and articles and quotations. We could throw everything, right? Till the cows come home, as the Minister of the CARICOM stated. But what benefit would that be for for the next reel of people who are going to be dying today? What benefit would that be for the layman, someone who has just lost his job? What benefit would that be for the children in clusters who are sick from COVID-19 and cannot progress? What benefit would it be to our nation? Madam Speaker, we are in the red zone. We are at a place where time is limited and options are few. As all of us are representatives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, it is imperative that we drive change that seeks the best interests of our country, that we utilize verifiable solutions, scientific solutions, and exercise our responsibility in protecting our citizens now. I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is, be it resolved that this National Youth Parliament call on the government to implement a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any against?
No.
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 Standing Order 56-2, Madam Speaker. Division.
The clerk will now take a division.
No.
Miss Gomes?
No.
Miss Gani?
No.
Miss Borsell?
No.
Miss Ramnarine?
No.
Mr. Sanchez?
No.
Miss Frederick?
No.
Miss Tucson?
No.
Miss Ram?
No.
Mr. Pope?
No.
Miss Marshall?
No.
Mr. Mirage Ali?
No.
Miss Clark?
No.
Miss Charles?
No.
Mr. Solomon?
No.
Mr. Rashid?
Yes.
Mr. Sipasad?
Yes.
Miss Kalu?
Yes.
Miss Buchun?
Yes.
Mr. Lachman?
Yes.
Miss Flavius?
Yes.
Miss Skeet?
Yes.
Mr. Kunai?
Yes.
Miss Kalist?
Yes.
Miss Campbell?
Yes.
Miss Sukram?
Yes.
Honorable members, the result of the division is 11 members voted for, 15 members voted against, and no members abstained. The motion has been negatived. The Leader of the House and Member for Aruka Maloney.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, before I put the question, allow me to express appreciation on behalf of all members of this National Youth Parliament and the Parliament, in particular the Planning Committee of the Office of the Parliament, which organized this 19th sitting of the National Youth Parliament. Today's debate focused on implementation of a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces in Trinidad and Tobago, and the contributions made by you, honorable members, were comprehensive and sought to highlight the various issues surrounding this topic. We, the members of the 19th National Youth Parliament, trust that the concerns raised and the proposals made during this debate will provide those in authority with a youth perspective on this issue. We wish to express our deepest gratitude to all officials who accepted our invitation and graced us with their virtual presence. To our families, relatives, and employers who exercised patience and assisted us in preparing for this debate, we say thank you. It was truly a distinguished privilege to have participated in this annual debate. Thank you. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to a date to be fixed.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Atiba Wilshire, and it is my pleasure to be the Master of Ceremonies for this portion of the day's proceedings. It has also been my pleasure to be able to follow the debate and listen to the contributions of the youth parliamentarians on this 19th National Youth Parliament. It was a very interesting debate. You all debated whether or not a mandatory vaccination policy should be introduced in secondary schools and workplaces. A very topical issue and one that has been the center of many a debate over the past 18 months. So I would like to give my little personal round of applause to the 27 participants in this National Youth Parliament who came from, I understand, 23 different secondary schools, tertiary level educational institutions, and youth groups. So I give you all a very good, very good. It is my pleasure this time to introduce to us, to give a congratulatory note, the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George.
Good afternoon, and before I start, I ask Madam Speaker to read from my script. To Senator Nigel De Freitas, Vice President of the Senate of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, our judges for this year's debate, the distinguished 19th National Youth Parliamentarians. We have here in this room the Leader of the House, the Attorney General, the member for Point of Pear. We also have the Leader of the Opposition, and I'm also told that we have two other opposition MPs present here, and of course, Madam Speaker. Specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to bring congratulatory remarks on this iteration of the 19th National Youth Parliament debate. And as Mr. Wilshire just said, I think you all deserve a rounding round of applause for your participation in this hybrid model. It is noteworthy we haven't done hybrid as yet in the National Parliament. This is the second occasion that the National Youth Parliament has done it. So therefore, you all are leading the way. The National Youth Parliamentary Debate has carved a rich legacy since its genesis in 1987. A cursory glance of the program on our Parliament channel, where are they now, former youth parliamentarians, will demonstrate that the claim to a rich legacy is not a hollow boast. Our youth parliamentarians have become members of Parliament, with some having served and currently serving in ministerial portfolios. Others have made a career in the administrative arm of the Parliament in the supporting roles of Parliamentary Clerks, and others have assumed influential decision-making roles in many aspects of our society. The commitment of the Parliament to the National Youth Parliament is in keeping with one of the Parliament's strategic objectives, that of outreach. We here at the Parliament subscribe to the view that parliamentary democracy is enhanced by promoting the knowledge and understanding of democratic governance through, among other things, engagement. 6 weeks of training, to which each cohort of upwards of 30 young persons are engaged, enables participants to learn and experience the value of parliamentary debate and the process of democratic decision making. Participants, your willingness to participate in this program and complete the course of training culminating in this debate is in itself worthy of commendation. In my humble view, it is not only you have, but our society as a whole has also benefited from your participation. This year's topic, the implementation of a mandatory vaccination policy in secondary schools and workplaces, has been engaging discussion worldwide, whether at informal or formal fora. In some states, such as South Africa, a mandatory policy for public schools has been implemented just about a week ago. The views and perspectives in the public domain locally, as well as internationally, on this issue of mandatory vaccinations in schools and workplaces are surely divided, and your debate showed that. I do recall in your orientation session, one of you posed the question, why this topic? My only response is that the topic is relevant, it is current, and we want to hear the voices of youth as represented by you on this issue. It may not have escaped you that this topic has not yet been ventilated in the national legislature. So you have been given a unique opportunity to articulate the pros and cons of the proposal. You have used this opportunity extremely well. There was the passion, MP for Couva North, Moruga, Chaguanas West, Princess Tong, and the robustness required, MP for Point-of-Peer. And while Madam Speaker had to stand on Standing Order 45 regarding your time limit, I had not witnessed anyone having occasion to raise the objection to the use of unparliamentary language. You also appreciated the basic characteristics of a debate. Objections were raised when it was observed that some members were too tied to their notes, Standing Order 4410. Interjections were respectfully declined, and in one case, with a rub, but within acceptable limits. Your presentations manifested that you did your research and that your research was current. Omicron, recent statistics, current reports from local experts and international agencies. You know, a member of parliament is supposed to be an expert on every topic. You will surely show that you were an expert on this topic and all the other topics that impacted it. Some of you were able to tie aspects of your portfolio into the debate, as the Minister of Finance used the recent IMF report to support her argument against the motion. The Minister of Planning and Development, as leader of the House, showed her intent listening skills by the interjections she made during the contribution of many other of the presenters. You all demonstrated effective use of the rules of engagement with your use of the standing orders. I heard objections on Standing Order 48.1, relevance, and 48.6, imputing improper motives. The characteristics of the rebuttal was also very evident, as some presenters in making their contributions referenced the arguments of previous speakers and tried to destroy those arguments. And although many others did it, I do recall the MP for Tabaquite in that regard. Although this is the National Youth Parliament, above all, you displayed the requisite maturity to handle an emotive topic. Esther Pauline Lederer, better known as Ann Landers, an American columnist who is now deceased, was quoted as saying that, and I quote, maturity is being able to stick with a job until it is finished, be able to bear an injustice without having to get even, and doing your duty without being supervised. And I want to say to you all, is that as your arguments were dismantled, you didn't bear that injustice without the need to get even. You must be commended for that. Before I close, I would like to specifically say a word to you, Madam Speaker, because while not actively a participant in the debate, you play a very important role in maintaining order, in ensuring that the conversation takes place within the ambit of the rules of engagement, standing orders. And Madam Speaker, I commend you. You did so with grace and very effectively. You were firm, and even when standing orders weren't raised and you made an observation yourself, you pointed it out. So I congratulate you. It seems that you had a lot of practice in this role. I commend you all for displaying during this debate the high traditions of parliamentary debate. I hope to see some of you in the future as representatives in our national parliament, while I then will sit in front of my television screen and watch you all. But for now, I am satisfied that you have demonstrated that you are fitting ambassadors for the advancement of democracy and the dismissifying of parliamentary practice and procedures. The Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs reminded us all of the primary obligations of MPs to serve in the best interests of all. The 19th cohort of the National Youth Parliamentary Debate, you have done your duty. You all understood the assignment and displayed the maturity required to make the tough decisions for this purpose. I salute you and congratulate you all on a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I would also like to reiterate the words of the Speaker when she said that it is not only you, but it is society as a whole that has benefited from your participation in today's debate. Speaking of participation, we would like to make special mention of some groups that participated for the very first time in a National Youth Parliamentary Debate. Those groups were the San Juan North Secondary School, the San Juan South Secondary School, Barrackport East Secondary, the Moruga Secondary, the Tranquility Government Secondary, the Siparia Police Youth Club, and the St. Joseph Police Youth Club. Now, as many of you may or may not know, we had a panel of distinguished persons who were tasked with the duty of observing every single contribution, word for word and action for action, and movement for movement, all right? Those were our panel of judges, and they are the ones who have to decide on who would be the best debaters coming out of today's debate. To speak a bit about that, I would now like to invite the Vice President of the Senate, Senator Nigel De Freitas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I, time and time again, are usually given the arduous task of having to judge an excellent crop of young citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as they engage in what is something that most people fear greater than death itself, which is public speaking and debating in this type of setting. But nonetheless, the task falls to me and my two co-judges, and we usually execute it to the best of our ability, given what it is that we have to face. That being said, the criteria for this year's National Youth Parliament was content, presentation and delivery, and debating skills, technique, and strategy. And each one of these areas was assigned a certain number of points. So for the first one, which is content, 25 points were assigned. For the second one, which is presentation and delivery, was assigned 15 points. And for the last, debating skills, technique, and strategy, it was assigned 10 points. Now, under the content, we were looking at knowledge of topic, the analysis and the relevance of information and arguments to the motion, and the evidence, which is facts, statistics, articles, reports, expert opinions to support arguments and/or what is presented in rebuttal of the other side's arguments. Now, when we looked at the presentation and delivery, we looked at the use of gestures, eye contact, whether you engaged audience well and were easy to follow and understand, good diction, clarity of expression, fluency and audibility, clarity of expression and tone, and one that most of us like to hear when we listen to a debate, humor or wit without distracting from content. Under the debating skills, technique, and strategy, we looked at the ability to rebut the other side's arguments or defend motions, the observance of parliamentary practice and procedure, and the knowledge of rules of conduct, content of speeches, interruptions, respect for the presiding officer. And lastly, we looked at the ability to effectively manage time and present a complete argument within the established time frame. Now, it all worked out to a total of 50 points in general. And like I said, it was no easy task that fell to us, the judges, to actually come up with a first place, a second place, and a third place. But before I go into that, which is what everybody wants to hear, who was the best speaker, and which school came out on top, and so forth. But before I get to that, there are some honorable mentions, which I will now get to. And these are individuals who performed exceptionally throughout the debating process. And the first honorable mention I have is from Bishop's Anstey High School. Can you guess with me? Miss Faith Flavius is the first honorable mention. The second honorable mention I have is from St. Joseph Convent, San Fernando, Miss Priya Sukra. And the third honorable mention I have hails from San Juan North Secondary, Miss Cheyenne Collis. Now I'm going to move on relatively quickly to what everybody wants to hear, to the actual positions. So in third place, we have from Arima North Secondary School, an opposition member, the member for Tabaquite, Amaris Skeet. Moving on to second place, we have the member for Pointe-a-Pierre, the chief whip, hailing from the Trinidad Youth Council, Mr. Daniel Rashid. And we have Mr. Rashid here with us, so we're going to take the opportunity to present to Mr. Rashid the prize. Okay, so now we get to the point of these proceedings that everybody wants to find out. It is why we sat through and listened to the debate, 3 hours, intently. It is why all the commentators online would have indicated who they wanted. They would have been part of the debate themselves. And before I do that, once again, I just want everybody to give a round of applause because everybody did exceptionally well. Just give yourself a round of applause. and we're going to get to the top spot. But I am not going to announce it. No, I'm going to give this opportunity to Madam Speaker. You can step forward. Who is going to announce the top debater that the judges came up with today? Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And the first place goes to an opposition member, somebody from Tobago, and she is Janae Campbell, the member for Chaguanas West. She represents the Tobago Youth Council. Congratulations, Ms. Campbell. It's a pity you're not here, but I'm sure we would get your trophy to you. I commend you. Keep up the good work. You and to all of you. So do we turn over to, yes, Mr. Wiltshire.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and Mr. Vice President, and to our top debaters and to those who received a special mention. We also have some special prizes to be announced. And for this, we turn to our senior legal officer, Ms. Chantal, or the People's Choice. Oh, yes, we have the People's Choice. My apologies, my apologies. Okay, and to announce the People's Choice, we are going to once again call on the Vice President, Madam Speaker. Okay, we call on Madam Speaker to announce the People's Choice.
Okay, so
This is the People's Choice. So as you would know, during the debate itself, and because it was virtual, we had the opportunity for individuals who were looking at the debate live on the Parliament YouTube channel. They would be able to comment. And there was a survey ongoing. If you went to the Parliament Facebook page, that you would be able to click on and vote for who you wanted to have as your People's Choice. So we have 3 places for that. And in the 3rd place for People's Choice, we have Winsty Buchan.
congratulations, Ms. Buchun. And you know, Mr. Vice President, I don't know if you were in a position to see the chat, but it was very alive.
I got wind of it. That's how alive it was. I was busy judging everyone, and I was being told how lively the chat was and how engaged everybody was, which again is an indication of how well the debate went.
Yeah. And the ability of the participants have also rallied the support of their friends, their schoolmates, their families to follow the debate in a real sense. So I congratulate you all for being able to whip up that sort of support and interest. So the 2nd place goes to Mr. Daniel Rashid. And the 1st place. Think we could do this together?
I think we can.
All right. So this goes to Mr. Daniel Shiv Lakshman.
Yes.
Mr. Lakshman, congratulations. You won the horse of the people out there. Okay, so that means that you're quite convincing in your arguments. So you're one of those that I expect to see in the right place someday soon. Congratulations and all the best.
Congratulations again.
So I think we now hand over to the Master of Ceremonies. We are mindful that our white Parliament does call for long, long hours. I know the national youth parliamentarians have been at this for almost 3 hours. So that I hope we won't be carrying them for too much longer. So I turn over to you to use your good discretion to bring this stuff fit in, please. Thank you.
I can assure you we won't keep you all for too much longer. Now we move to the discussion of the special prizes. And to do that, we invite our Senior Legal Officer, Ms. Chantal Laroche.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon to all present, our participants, Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President. This year, we did something a little different, and we've actually selected the most improved debater on both the opposition and the government bench. This is new to us. It happens every year. Somebody comes in and we look at the participants and we say, wow, this person is going to be a lot of work. Or wow, this person on debate day may flake. And then suddenly you all blossom a couple days before the debate, sometimes the day before, sometimes the day of. We never know how your improvement is going to come along. So this year we are actually recognizing 2 persons for most improved debates. And the person on the government bench who has been selected by our team here, who will have trained you over the past few weeks, is Mr. Jalan Sanchez of the St. Joseph Police Station. Congratulations, Jalan. Looking all smart today. You know, you did really well in terms of improving over the course of the training. When you first started, we gave you some criticism and you took it on board and your contribution improved tremendously. So congratulations on that. And on the opposition bench, the most improved debater is Ms. Winsty Buchun. See your name calling whole day here. You did so well today. I will be one to say the first day you said nothing. The second training day you said nothing. The first debate, mock debate, you said very little. And I was like, wow, this girl is so shy and so soft-spoken. I wonder if she'll ever come into enjoying the debate. And I will say, particularly on Saturday when we had our final training there, and I told you, you know, you've come a really long way. I meant it. And I think everyone else agreed. So congratulations to you. Your improvement was extraordinary. And finally, before I leave here, we according to the young people, we big up everybody. And we didn't big up a particular person. Madam Speaker. In selecting the speaker, we usually look amongst you to see someone who has the deportment, the maturity, even-tempered personality. We wanted to go with a female speaker this year because we had a male speaker last year. We looked around, we listened. And Chelsea was a clear choice from the start. Chelsea, we want to thank you, congratulate you. You called standing orders on people today, as we discussed. And throughout the training, you do have a maturity about you that I really want to commend in terms of how you delivered your rulings, how you cautioned people, the questions you asked us about procedure, you know, you seem to really embrace the experience. And so congratulations on successfully chairing this 19th Youth Parliamentary Debates today. Thank you so much. You were brave to teach. We didn't have to do too much for you to get understand the standing orders and apply them properly. So thank you all. Thank you, my babies. You all are, you know, yes, something else. Oh, for the speaker, right? Ma'am, if you would you like to Are you staying there? You tell me what to do. You tell me what to do. Are you coming down? Shall I come up? Oh no, I forgot. You come down. Right. No, it's all sorts of things. So I will hold them, but for the photo purposes, I'll hold it like this. Congratulations so much. You have it? Right. Oh. Yeah? Okay, great. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaRoche. We are almost at the end of today's proceedings, and we have come to the portion of the proceedings where we are going to have the vote of thanks, and that is going to be done by the Vice President of the Senate, Senator Nigel Zebra.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. So we've come to the end of the proceedings. And for most people who are looking on, we don't realize that this entire proceedings takes some doing, as Ms. Chantal LaRoche just indicated when she was speaking. And therefore it falls to me to say thanks to each and every one who would have been part of this process in terms of getting all of the students ready for this procedure. What I can say is that when we started this last year in terms of this hybrid type of a system, we were really looking to see how it would play out, because a lot of the procedures that occurs in the national parliament in relation to raising standing orders and just the ebb and flow of debate has been designed in a way to really, work well and flow well in person. So having what is the first hybrid system coming out of something that, is challenging, which is the global pandemic, we really wanted to see how that would work. And I'm definitely seeing the growth in terms of this system and the ebb and flow of things as I was judging in terms of the way people raise standing orders and the way the debate actually progressed from the first speaker into the wrap up of the person who moved the motion. So for that, it has to be that the individuals who would have helped you along have to be given a round of applause, because they would have done it excellent. For that, I just want to thank firstly your parents who would have supported you, your teachers, your mentors, your sisters and brothers who I'm sure would have had to sit down and listen to you practice your debates. And I also want to thank, most importantly, the parliamentary staff that would have trained you over these last few months. I'm sure they would have told you, and I reiterate here today, that the skill sets that you learn in terms of being able to execute an argument for you in 6 minutes is something that you will take with you throughout the rest of your life, whether you move into your jobs, whether you move into university, some that are in high school right now, and whether you move forward into your life in terms of the things that you want to acquire or attain towards the success that you ascribe for yourself. So that being said, we must thank each and every one of the individuals that supported you and give them once again another round of applause, because you guys did extremely well. So open now to Mr. Chairman to wrap up these proceedings.
We have now come to the end. I would like to once again say thanks to everyone, all of the persons involved in the planning, the parliamentarians. I'd like to say thanks to your parents and family members as well for loaning you all to us, and a job well done. We now stand adjourned to a date to be. Thank you.
Recording stopped.